Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 245. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my Puerto Rican son, Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today, my friend? Wearing your Skyrim shirt, bringing it back, but also making it recent since that game never goes away.
Yeah. It's an evergreen shirt, evergreen game. No, I feel pretty good. Today's an awkward day because my alarm didn't go off, so I woke up as Dustin sent the email for this room, and I was like, oh no, it's one of those days.
Yeah,
everything's gonna be off today. I feel
there's no worries about that though, because I was just on Constellation a few days ago, where I was like, I literally woke up 5 minutes ago when I was doing the show. So
oh yeah, no, I just hate that. I just don't like the feeling of like slowly coming into consciousness as I'm recording. Mm-hmm. It's awful. But
sounds exciting to me.
Yeah, it's exciting.
You never know what's going to happen at that point. The inhibitions are down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, good luck.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Dustin Furman, executive producer. Welcome. How are you today?
Feeling very good. I'm fully rested. I feel no sickness. I've got a coffee, which unfortunately my coffee brewer broke recently. Holly dropped something on it, and it's glass. The pour over thing just totally shattered. So I had to resort to some alternative coffee brewing methods, such as the AeroPress, which looks like a weird pump thing. If you've ever seen one of those before, looks a little strange. Also good at making coffee though. But we have a new thing coming tomorrow, so I'm good. Other than that,
get yourself a little Folgers.
No, absolutely not. Folgers?
Yeah, little Folgers in your cup.
No, absolutely not. Not Folgers. If I'm going that route of coffee, it's going to be Tim Hortons. Actually, is my basic bitch, we'll say, version coffee of choice.
The best part of waking up, right? I mean, they had that little dope little jingle.
It was a lie though. It's just it's simply a lie. Another lie, capitalistic lie of marketing.
You think they would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
Folgers. What do you? Folgers? I can't think of the last time I had Folgers. Probably have had it at a diner without knowing or something.
I will say I like those red cups. Those red cartons they have. I feel
like the tins.
Yeah, the tin. Yeah. I feel like I would buy Folgers coffee just to dump all the useless dust. You see cremation dust they call coffee out, and then just dump it in the trash can and use that tin for something else. It's kind of like when this might be super specific to me, but like my grandparents or like even my parents sometimes would have these like cookie boxes. And I'd be like, cookies, and then I would open them and it would just be like sewing supplies.
Right, the blue circular tin. Yeah. You seem incapable of using the word tin, which is interesting. Like, it's not a word that's in your lexicon.
I never called them tins because like tin to me is a material.
Yeah,
like a tin can or like a tin something.
But that is a tin can.
Well, it's a tin box, but at that point, I might as well just say a box because you understood exactly what I was talking about.
I don't know. I don't know that I would call it a box.
It's like when British people are like, "Oh, throw it in the bin."
Right.
It's like, no.
Or do you want a biscuit? And I'm like, do I want a biscuit? I don't know that I mean, I love biscuits, but I'm not going to just eat a biscuit. You're talking about cookies?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a fucking animal.
Yeah, I'm like,
cookie is a dumb name though. A cook, like, is it something because you cook it and you just add an E end like you're a 3-year-old, cook E.
You don't cook it though, you bake it.
That is true.
No,
so what is going on with cookies?
Bakey.
Yeah, baking might be a slur though.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like this is getting racist. I was going to say something that was going to be construed as racist as well, which I didn't mean it to be, which was that 10%, because you were talking about the powder, the useless powder inside the Colombian tin, the box, as you would call it. Yeah. And I was thinking that probably 10% of Folgers powder is the cremated remains of the dead people that are harvesting their beans for 25 cents. I'm sure Folgers isn't using that fair trade bean.
Oh no.
It's probably dirt. It looked like dirt. To be perfectly honest with you, my dad used to fucking scoop that shit, and my dad would be drinking Folgers. The thing about that though is that he became like a coffee snob later on, but I don't think there was really such a thing as a coffee snob per se until like the 90s. There was no like, Starbucks is from the 80s as far as I remember. And I think before that, it was like, yeah, you go to your cafe and you do your fucking beat poetry and shit like that.
There's actually considered coffee waves. I can't remember like if we're on like third or fourth wave coffee based on like what the, because we're past the Starbucks era.
It's like feminism
by a lot. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It's like console generations. I hate that.
Right. Right. Guys, by the way, I didn't want to forget this, so I'm using this now. We have a listener who wrote into us. His name is Trent let's see here. Trent Picacaco. Picacaco. Piccicicacco. So, dude, that's... You have 5 C's in your last name. 5!
It's at least 3 too many.
Wait, there's 3 C's and there's 2 C's in a row in that one?
There's 2. It's like Mississippi where it's twice. Piccicicacco.
Is that a CH sound? I think I'm not super...
I don't know. Trent, thank you for writing it. But he says he's a statistician and a data scientist. And he did this thing he sent to me. And he says, has sacred symbols gotten more negative over time? A sentiment analysis.
Oh, man.
He says the motivation. Oh, no. Listening to an older episode of Sacred Symbols and a question was asked, sparking the conversation of whether the podcast has gotten more negative over time or gaming in general has. This got me thinking, could I apply natural language processing techniques to prove this theory? The method. I scraped the audio files of Sacred Symbols off the web. My method limited me to files under 2 hours, so I pulled 2 from each year from 2018 and including 2022. And then he said I transcribed the audio files into text using a third-party software. I performed sentiment analysis in R, which is coding software, to try and prove or disprove this idea, and he shows all of the work he did. The bottom line, the most interesting sentiment is the results to analyze were the sentiments of sadness and negative. I looked into these further in figure 2, which he shows. I removed the 2018 year to make things clearer. I modeled the percentage abundance of words of sadness and negativity linearly against the podcast over time. The results were intriguing. They both have very high negative correlation coefficients, and the relationship is statistically significant at the 10% level. In other words, it is statistically correct to say that with 90% certainty, during the Sacred Symbols podcast from 2019 to 2022, sentiments of sadness and negativity have decreased.
Oh, no.
Over time. Bet you didn't see that coming. Decreased over time. What do you think of that, Chris?
We got to step our game up, I think.
I know. Or down, depending on how you look at it.
Oh, yeah. I don't know, man.
I have a question. You said he pulled 2 episodes per year?
Yeah, I think he just pulled 2 random episodes. I mean, this is just it's a statistical analysis. It's very similar to when you're polling in politics and you poll 1,000 people.
Sure.
They should be from around the same time each year, I think. Like just to gain like a more accurate semblance of like, because Christmas is depressing,
Yeah, Christmas is depressing. I mean, I'm always depressed. The thing is am I going to become, here's the question. I'm cutting back I'm apparently an ungodly level of Lexapro that like in California, they didn't even blink at. And here they're like, you can't take this much Lexapro. So they're cutting me down. And so I'm down a third right now. And I'm wondering, like, am I going to get more depressed?
A third less. A third more depressed.
1/3 more depressed.
And I was talking because I'm also, as we go into in the live show that will come out soon, and you're going to talk about that, Dustin. I was talking about how I'm just profusely sweating lately, and apparently that has a lot to do with the Lexapro, and also like a little bit of not that I'm really heavy, but a little bit of my weight gain comes from Lexapro as well. So I was asking my doctor, I'm like, am I going to sweat less and lose weight? And he's like, I'm not sure about the weight, but you're definitely going to sweat less. Like, yes,
that's good.
Yes. Because that's why Micah and I talk about this sometimes. White people love having fans in their faces when they sleep. Right? I mean, this is just a thing
a racial thing?
Yeah, it's a racial thing. White people love having fans in their faces when they sleep. It's a meme.
I've never heard that.
But I was wondering if that's because I'm on so many antidepressants that I'm running at the heat of some sort of nuclear reactor at all times. In other words, I'm not natural. I don't have a what is it? Homeostasis, right? Isn't that like the whole, like when everything's good?
Look,
that's
man,
like your.
That sounds right.
Right.
I'm
asking you guys to pull way back. 6th grade science.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. A squared plus B squared equals C squared, I guess. Something like that.
Pythagorean, right?
Yeah, Pythagorean theorem.
Yeah.
And, I know that. I remember that. I remember the word defenestrate from vocabulary, but like, I mean, I don't know what the fuck you want me to do with that, you know?
Can you? That's true. I don't know what I there are words that I try to work in, try to get them in so I can kind of like learn how to use them. But that's one of the words where I'd be afraid. Like I'd be thinking about it for sentences before I got to it.
Yeah, defenestrate.
And I'd be like, am I using it right? And you just kind of have to be confident with it. And most of the time, no one's going to know anyway.
No. Now people
Doesn't you have
didn't pay
something you
attention.
wanted to say? I thought I heard you pipe up.
I'm thinking deeply. I mean, just about this, like, is sacred symbols getting more or less negative? I'm caught up on the sample size, just because I think that this can
You're still on that.
variate, week to week. I just don't know if we can say. Now, the question here that I'm really interested in is he's talking about like ingesting data through using some kind of AI model or something like that. First of all, maybe this man who wrote in with the confusing last name, what was his first name? Trent,
right?
Maybe
Trent with all the C's in the last name. Yeah.
I mentioned a few weeks ago, maybe we can get this AI version of sacred symbols going. That way we don't have to do anything anymore. We can just build AI versions of ourselves, spit out the show, and maybe no one will even notice. In fact, maybe this is AI right now.
Can I tell you something? I would love to see like one of those videos. Like those videos of the presidents playing video games kill me. Like I don't like. There's one where Biden became self-aware or whatever, and he's like, the subtitles made an error or whatever, and I'm like, this is amazing. This is the lore. The lore of this is so good.
Yeah, it is. It's especially good because I like the ones where they have like some sort of camaraderie with each other. Like you're jumping in and they all know each other, and
yeah,
and they're very familiar with each other, which is it is very funny. Some of it's getting. There's a fine line I'm noticing between the good ones and the bad ones, though. Like I need people to leave this to the professionals, and I'm not even saying I'm one of them.
100%. Yeah,
leave it to the professionals.
There are some of them that just like are really like bland or boring, or so like they're just constantly insulting each other, and that's not fun. What's fun is the one where they write in the stutters, they write in like they let them interrupt each other, and like they talk over each other, and it sounds real. There's so many good ones though, but I think there's one where like Trump called Biden a dementia-riddled warlock, and it fucking killed me. But
I like the ones too where George W. Bush like pipes up every once in a while.
Yeah.
And he's like just like kind of the guy in the background that like I guess is friends with everyone, doesn't say much, and they kind of just ignore.
Yeah,
which is
he's that guy. He's that guy in the front. I love that. You guys want to run some? You guys want to run some Latfall?
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah, those are good. So yeah, leave it to the professionals. But we're entering scary times. We are entering a true time where we'll never know when things are real or not, which is kind of scary. I kind of want the EMP. Like sometimes I talk a lot of shit about the Chinese Communist Party, but there's a small part of me that wants them to just get it over with, right? Like get the EMPs launched, get the naval blockade going. Let's get this going already, you know? Jesus Christ.
Yeah. All this
I don't have to deal with this anymore. We'll be putting I'd be first against the wall if the Chinese took but I'd like to think that maybe they would like me and we can work something out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think after listening to this show, they definitely like you.
Oh yeah, they love me.
They've been listening. Wait, so is there Chinese agents listening in as well, along with the FBI guy?
Yeah, the FBI guy throwing his headphones off. There's probably, I'd like to think that. Different. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm sure we're told. I want to go to China. Like I do want to go there and visit one day, and you have to actually get a visa and like get permission to go there. It's not that big of a deal, but I do wonder if that stuff is relevant, like, or if I have to disclose that stuff or whatever.
No, yeah, I would.
Or if they would just, because they're not going to disappear an American. I don't think.
I mean, you don't think?
Yeah, like just some video game podcaster, but it would be cool. I want to see it with my own eyes, and I'm sure the people are lovely. You know, I think it would be an interesting place to go one day. But anyway, this is Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. Welcome. We publish each and every week. You can get us 3 days early and ad free over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. We're beginning to plateau a little bit. I'm going to need you guys to go over there and kind of keep things bubbling up, making me feel pretty good about myself. And I appreciate that. Support over on patreon.com/laststandmedia gets you Sacred Symbols Plus twice a week. That's our supplemental podcast. We publish those occasionally on YouTube, but they're all only for Patreon first and foremost. We just put up a really awesome Sacred Symbols Cross Defining Duke episode. Defining Duke, of course, is our network's Xbox podcast. And we all drafted our individual fake publishers. And I thought that was a lot of fun. The Last of Us HBO review, only for Sacred Symbols Plus, continues. We're going 2 hours on each episode or so, which is a lot of fun. The 9th episode is coming up from the time we're recording and publishing this. Sacred Sail Saga will return. Sacred League will return as well once The Last of Us goes away, because that's taking up 50% of our real estate right now. The Dead Space spoiler cast and review discussion will publish the day after this publishes on Patreon. That's done. Hogwarts Legacy's spoiler cast with Carolyn will be next week. We did a really great spoiler podcast with my best friend Ramon. People make fun of me for calling him my best friend, but he is. I love him dearly. And we talked about his entry into games, and we're doing a lot of really fun stuff over there.
Why do people make fun of you for calling him your best friend? What is that?
I don't know. People just are always like my best friend. I don't know. I just think that they think it's like childlike or childish, I guess, maybe.
That's fucking bizarre.
Or people just like people make fun of me for everything. That's why when I was saying when my GameFAQs stuff were being circulated, usually when my stuff on GameFAQs is circulated, even though it's really good, especially for a fucking 16-year-old who have written a lot of this stuff, it's usually to make fun of me. So that's why I was like, oh, it was like, that the recent time it got circulated, people were actually being nice. And so you never really know when people are being nice or when they're being mean. But they'll be mean about anything,
That's weird.
Yeah. There's so many people that just want to tear you down. You know what I mean? But you know who didn't want to tear us down? The nearly 500 people that came and saw us in Houston for an evening with Last Stand 2, which we did in late February. It was a lot of fun. Dustin, I know you have something to say about this. I know the audience is very curious about what is going on with the video, because we had it professionally recorded. In fact, it was, other than the venue, the most expensive component of the entire show was recording it. So obviously we're going to have it for you. Maybe we should have said something sooner. I thought that was kind of a given. And I think that people were confused about why it's taking so long because we published Sacred 200 so quickly. But that was a one-off order on my behalf, because that was a numbered episode of the show and we needed it to go. So this is just a one-off thing. So what's going to happen is, Dustin, I'll let you take it away.
So, okay, yeah, as Colin was saying, this shit's awesome. It is 3-camera, 4K, professionally shot by some really awesome dudes. Basically, it's the same guys that shot Sacred 200. So you can
the catalog.
That's it. Yeah, catalog. They're awesome guys. And if you saw the quality of Sacred 200, you can expect the same thing from this. It's going to look awesome. So here's the plan: is right now the video is actively being worked on by me every day, and it's coming soon, like in a matter of like a week or two. I don't want to put a firm date, just because with Premiere Pro and renders and stuff like that, we'll give you a date as soon as I'm 100% positive we're ready to launch. But know that it's not months away. This isn't something you're going to see in 6 months. This is like pretty dang soon.
Yeah, like this month, March for sure.
Yes.
I mean, no doubt.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. I don't want people to think that when I say soon, it's like a 3 to 6 months thing. It's very soon. I just don't want to put a firm date, because I want to be able to promise you an exact time. And partially because when we do this, it will be exclusive to our $5 patrons for a very long time. We haven't talked about an exact date, but like Colin was saying, this was a very expensive component of the show. And so we want to do this as a way to reward our patrons, and also because the people who are there spent a lot of money to be there, and we want to give them some kind of exclusivity for the time being, as kind of like just to keep it on the inside for a little bit. But we do want to get everyone in, so it will be exclusive to $5 patrons. And here's the other thing I'm really excited about. We're going to be doing a Discord watch party when it comes out. So basically, I'm figuring out there's like a watch thing in Discord that we'll let everyone know in advance. You can plan it out. But basically, this is like the YouTube Premiere feature. We can't use that because you can't premiere something on YouTube privately. That's unlisted.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing it through Discord. There will be a time. You can queue it up, and basically you can chat along with everybody and kind of get that live feel experience. So look forward to that. It's coming. One last question I want to answer that I know is coming is an audio version. There will be no audio version of this. It wouldn't make sense to listen to. It's a live show. It was designed to be presented before a live audience. So you're already getting one level of adaptation. There's lots of visual aspects to the show. So there's not going to be an audio version. There will only be a video. And as I said earlier, it looks so good. It looks better than we deserve. So I'm really excited for you guys to see it very soon. Again, we'll keep you in the loop. We'll let you know in advance before the Discord watch party happens.
Cool. Sounds good. That sounds great. And Chris, by the way, God bless you. Would that be the latest God Bless You of all time?
No, certainly not.
Yeah, I would think that. I think ones would have happened even later than that, but I didn't want to let a good sneeze go to waste. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, so Evening with Last Stand 2, and we'll have more information too about what our plans are for the future soon. I know Ben, I think, understands that I can just only deal with so many things at once. So he's had things to say about the next show before we even did the Houston show, but I just can't deal with it. So we're going to deal with that soon, and that will be fun. And I like to be open and honest with people about the nature of the live shows, because you were saying, we're putting it on Patreon. This was kind of an expensive thing for us. And we like to be open and honest about the way things work. It's like the live shows are really not a profit-driven endeavor for us. In fact, I'm pretty sure that when we play Europe, we won't be making money because just the nature of travel, the venues, all of the rest, the fact that, and I'm not trying to be a dickhead, the dollar is fairly strong against global currency right now. Like a lot of these things will help. Some of these things will hurt. It's going to like really, it's going to be like a pretty crazy fly-by-night thing that we're doing, but that's kind of the idea. I'm not trying to like extract blood from a stone here. I don't want people to think that. We aren't really making money on this to begin with. Patreon is, of course, podcasting is very profitable for us, and that's awesome. And we appreciate that. That's the core product. It would actually be better for us to have not done the live show financially. So I don't want people to get upset and get mad that things are, behind paywalls or whatever. I totally understand that, but we're not trying to extract blood from a stone. It really is the nature of doing a live show. When you draw 400, 500, 600 people to a show, it's you edge a small profit and you hope for the best. And so I appreciate people's understanding in that regard.
Right. And I think it's worth saying too, Colin, that I don't know, Ben and I, we were talking options. Like it felt wrong to do like a pay-per-view type thing, because I know people do that, and we didn't want to do that. And so it's like one of those things that you could sign up for 1 month on our Patreon, watch it, download all of our exclusive episodes, and then nope out if you really wanted to. But I think that once you're there, you'll find that there's an insane amount of value. So.
Yeah, for less than a new PlayStation 5 game per year, you get all early ad-free access, all access to the shows. The $5 tier is like the sweet spot. The $1 and $2 tiers are good entry points, but you'd be surprised how few people use those tiers relative to the $5 tier, which is where, the action is. So we appreciate everyone's support there as well. And if you want to support us with merch as well, laststandmedia.store, that's all run by Micah right out of our house. And we appreciate your love, kindness, and support there as well. You have something to say about some things here too. Yeah.
Yes. If you want a Pope sticker, we ordered some special for the live event. We didn't quite sell all of them, so there's some available right now in the store. If you've missed out, we do limited runs of these. Go get them.
Free shipping in the United States for all stickers.
And we're also going to be selling the remaining event posters on there soon. We'll probably tie those together with when we release the video. So I know people wanted to get one of those. We'll have one for you. So pretty soon.
All right, great. So thank you for your support over there as well. Laststandmedia.store. We're a small business trying our best to stay alive, pay everyone fairly, treat everyone well, and that's all thanks to a very open and generous audience. So thank you for that. All right, let's get into topics of discussion, my friend, and stretch our legs a little bit as we. Did I say my friend? My friends. If I said my friend, who am I talking to? Man, that's. By the way, here's a little epilogue to the. We were already away from it, but the statistical analysis. Chris, is it not possible that what has changed since the show began? Something fundamental. There was just you and me for most of it. And then Dustin came in. And I think that might have a relative bearing on it as well.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. Is it a good point? I don't know.
I consider myself neither negative or positive. I'm just somewhere in the middle. So compared to you guys, that
oh my god, that's like
that would be a very significant lift.
Yeah, that would be like a net rise.
I don't know who's more negative, Chris or I. Like the funny thing about Chris and I actually though, and this is why I think Chris and I got along, and I think got along quickly, was Chris and I are both fake negative. And I don't know if that's like, I think that's lost on a lot of people. And I'm very confident saying that about Chris is like, we don't really live these morose, like I'm morose and like, a loner and all that kind of stuff. But in reality, a lot of it is just, I know people find that part of me funny, and I find humor in that, and I play it up to a major degree.
Yeah, 1,000,000%.
And that's why I think Chris and I got along quickly, because I think that we just saw that in each other, and that's my favorite kind of humor.
Yeah.
So we could pep it up if you want, but not that I'm like, I will say I never get out of bed and I'm happy to get out of bed.
Ew, yeah, no, I'm never like, I rolled out of bed to do this and I was groaning the whole time.
Right. Exactly.
I was happy. It's weird. It's kind of like traveling, right? Where it's like, I like to be in new places, but fuck, do I hate like the process of doing that.
Definitely.
Like it's just awful. And I will let you know about it. Like you will, if I don't like what I'm currently doing right now, you will know about it. Absolutely. I will complain and I won't stop. But yeah,
we got to bring supersonic travel back, and I know that they're working on doing that, but that's going to be, I think, a major part of it for me.
What do you mean?
And we have to get over that. We have to figure out like ways to use it over land. I know it's like it's very hard to do. Maybe you make like corridors or something, but 2 hours used to take like 2 hours to on the Concorde to go to London from New York. That's fucking awesome. I mean, that's trivial, dude.
That'd be amazing.
And that would cut it. So imagine you were traveling that fast domestically, and then I wouldn't give a shit anymore, Or how about some like photo like travel, like light travel? Pretty interesting.
Oh. But then wouldn't you like age backwards or like some weird shit would happen if you did that?
They might put you back together the wrong way. I mean, I remember that was so people often, I bring up the Philadelphia experiment sometimes, which is this like really creepy conspiracy theory during World War II. About the United States trying to teleport ships around using like bending light or whatever, and when they would reconstitute the ships where they would go, they would be all fucked up. Like people would be fused into the ships, and like the ships would be all out of whack and all of that. And so maybe they were onto something. Maybe that's what would happen to me too. Maybe we should just all walk. Be easier that way.
Maybe we should pep the show up and pretend like do those like with the fake ukulele music. With like the cheery ukulele music in the background. Sure. It's like, hey, everybody, welcome to Sacred Symbols.
Yeah.
God.
Smash that like button.
Christ. Yeah, smash that like button, please.
By the way, saying smash that like button has gone through what I feel like is maybe 3 or 4 metas at this point. Where like people said it honestly, right? And earnestly. Then people made fun of it. Then people adopted it. Then it became unironic. Now people use it earnestly, and now it's becoming ironic again.
I would agree with that, actually. Yeah. That actually is a sound interpretation of the timeline.
One of the smartest things I ever said.
Yeah. It's a really intelligent thesis.
Thank you. Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Athletic Greens and their high-quality AG1 health supplement, the easiest and best way to get some daily nutrition with a slate of added perks. Learn more right now at athleticgreens.com/sacred. I'm not sure I'm crazy about the word lazy, especially in relation to myself, but it's true, I am lazy. I work hard, but I also seek the paths of least resistance. That's reality. So when Athletic Greens and their AG1 health supplement first entered my life a couple of years ago or so, I was instantly intrigued. A catch-all powder chock full of good, nutritious stuff that I mix into water and drink, and it tastes good? Sign me up, especially with my typical diet of fried foods and carbs. The reality is this. When I drink a glass of water with AG1 mixed in, I can feel the difference. My energy level is higher, I'm able to get through my daily weightlifting and cardio regimens more easily, and my body is probably a little less confused as to why I work out so hard and eat so poorly, because this certainly isn't poor eating. Quite the contrary, with Athletic Greens, you couldn't possibly eat any better, so to speak. Each scoop of AG1 powder is packed with 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients from around the world, and the benefits are myriad, including better gut health and even a more positive mood. Taking care of your body does indeed pay dividends. So consider making Athletic Greens AG1 supplement a part of your daily routine. It's a scoop in a glass of water every day, that's it. Join the millions of people who have used Athletic Greens over the last decade plus and see what it can do for you. My friends, if you're looking for an easier way to take supplements, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs of AG1 with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/sacred. That's athleticgreens.com/SACRED. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/sacred for their high quality, effective, and healthy AG1 supplement. Check it out.
Anyway.
Austin Dubose wrote into us. I'm sorry. Did you want to say more, Chris?
No. Let's please
Please
start.
Please. Austin Dubose wrote in and said, "Hey fellas, following up on my write-in a couple of weeks ago, I just wanted to officially announce that the Sacred Sandwich has launched in our humble deli of Litchfield, Ohio this week. It's made nearly identical to your specifications, the iceberg lettuce and all. And I must say, customers are really digging your build so far, Colin. I think the pepper turkey really brings it all together. We've had some local listeners of the show drop by already to try it, a couple of which even drove more than 2 hours to come and try the sandwich. It's all been very exciting and unexpected. My question is, could this be the start of an unofficial list of Last Stand Media landmarks? Maybe a pit stop on a future LSM live show in Ohio. Just don't take the train. Also, I'm curious, Chris and Dustin, what would your ideal deli sandwiches be? Thanks, guys. This is a great honor. Because this is very unlike Curb Your Enthusiasm, where Larry gets the worst sandwich. Like, he doesn't get to pick it. They just give him garbage. He's trying to fucking trade that thing the entire day. Here, I got to not only make my own sandwich, but it's been adopted as is. It's a great honor.
Yeah.
But I had a question because I messaged him and I don't think he's gotten back to me yet.
No, he has.
Oh, he has?
Yeah, he just came in 9 minutes ago.
Okay, cool. So I messaged, here he is. I messaged him like, what's the deli's name? And he says, it's the Deli on the Circle, 9283 Norwalk Road in Litchfield, Ohio. All right. So it's Deli on the Circle, 9283 Norwalk Road. Now, here's the thing though. When we go crazy and have our villain arc and everything goes amok, right? Are they going to ultimately have to destroy Deli on the Circle like they had to destroy Hitler's bunker because they were afraid that people would come and worship at it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like you got to be careful what you ask for.
Yeah. This could go tits up real quick. But yeah, I don't know. That's awesome. I love that. I love that. The question though, as far as like what your ideal deli sandwich would be, I don't know. I feel like mine would be probably something with pastrami. But the thing is, I never really have the same sandwich. Like, I always kind of fuck around with it. Like, it's always like, pastrami and like maybe some mustard. Then maybe like it's a, lettuce, tomato, bacon, salami, provolone, some like weird, like some vinegar dressing on it. I don't know. Like, I feel like whatever in a chunky Italian sub with a copious amount of bacon is, I feel like that would be mine.
Yeah. Okay.
Like just like obnoxiously, like really like a tall one, like a Scooby-Doo sandwich,
Dustin.
Yeah.
Sandwich.
Well, just before I answer that, this deli is 2 hours and 23 minutes away from me. So not out of the realm of possibility. Particularly
but you have to go through the exclusion zone in order to get there. So
yeah, exactly. Maybe when I'm everyone probably like once or twice a year I end up in Cleveland, so maybe I'll have to go check this place out if I'm have the misfortune of being in Ohio. But,
I mean, you absolutely have to go check it out if you're over in Ohio.
Yeah,
just go in a hazmat suit.
Deli on the Circle. Yeah.
Here's the thing about my sandwich is that some Sacred Symbols listeners have picked up on this already, but I am a low-key picky eater. I don't want a million things on my sandwich. In fact, when I make a sandwich at home, it's usually like either like salami or sometimes I have turkey or something like that. I'll put pepper jack cheese on it and then kettle chips. And that's it.
That's nice.
Just that. That's all I need. Every once in a while, especially with the turkey, put a little Chick-fil-A sauce on, just a little glaze on there. That's pretty nice. But I just don't know if that's the type of sandwich people would be looking for at a deli, where you're getting something kind of more advanced.
No one would pay money for that.
Right. So I don't know. I think I'd still like to go, and maybe we can figure out some other product there that we can adorn with the stand down moniker or something. I'd like to cut a ribbon. Maybe. I know I'm not owning and opening the business.
We're just taking full ownership of it. Just being like, all right, we're here. We're ready.
Yeah. I don't know. Some to think about.
Well, I love it. Congratulations, Austin. Hope the business is doing well. It's so interesting because food, I worked at a deli. That was my first job. It was actually my second job, but my first real, like, consistent years-long job. And I liked it. Like, it's not something I would want to do now, but it wasn't a bad job. And there's something very attractive about owning a place like that to me. But it's just being in food and like everything that's happened over the last few years and all that. It's just so dangerous to get. I don't even know how you Chris just said, "Gonna go blow my nose real quick."
Oh,
So he's good. He just left.
he's got to
out.
blow his load.
He's gonna go blow. Imagine he had to go like
Nose
rub one out real quick. He just couldn't handle it. He's like, I just gotta get this out of me.
I would like that if for the video, he didn't leave the room. He's just slightly off camera. And that's where the load blowing goes on.
Right.
So
you see it a little bit. Oh, there it is. Only kidding.
Oh,
Austin, back to you. I'm sorry. Litchfield, Ohio. So pleased for your success and many good wishes from us.
Take a photo when you get the sandwich. Post it online. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, me too. And I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased you're using Boar's Head product. Only a Bush League deli wouldn't use Boar's Head. You know what I mean? Let's just be honest. Like that's like a huge. I wouldn't even acknowledge your existence if you didn't use Boar's Head. I would have been like done.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
No place in this Long Island culture, my friend. I'm sorry, Chris. Are you well? Are you well?
Yeah, it's. I think you know what it is because it's finally getting warm out here, which means like the pollen's up. So this is actually just straight up allergies, which sucks. But oh well.
Wow, guys, you want to hear some breaking news?
Yes.
What?
WB has delayed Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League from May to an undisclosed time later this year. This follows major blowback from its showcase during the last state of play. And this is a report. That's our friend Benji Sales reporting from Bloomberg. So this is Jason Schreier. I don't know if I'm going to be able to see. Yeah, I've seen too many articles. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So either read it. You can read, right? You're
it's tough sometimes, but we'll see.
You're illiterate. So go ahead and give us a little something.
Warner Brothers has again delayed a video game based on the Suicide Squad comic book franchise, pushing it from a May release date to later this year, according to a person with direct knowledge of the matter. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, a multiplayer shooter game starring a group of comic book anti-heroes, was originally planned for release in 2022, until it slipped to 2023 early last year. Last fall, London-based developer Rocksteady Studios said it would be out May 26th. The new release date was not yet clear. A representative for Warner didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. The person with knowledge of the delay asked not to be named, discussing information that isn't public. Suicide Squad was showcased during a PlayStation event in February, but received criticism from fans due to its live service elements, such as purchasable cosmetics and a requirement to play online. And then he has a wrap up about Harry Potter selling 12 million. So that's it.
What do they think they're going to do to it? I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I mean, it's interesting. Cool. Good for them. I mean, they're listening to people. I personally think they should have. Well, I don't know. What do I know? It's like, you got to kind of stay the course now. I mean, you're invested. This is it. I mean, this is the game. I just think you have to kind of prove it to people. You might be able to carve some things back, but I don't know what you're supposed to be able to do with the game. The game is done. I mean, the game was supposed to come out in 2 months. I wouldn't be surprised if the next thing you would have heard about Suicide Squad was that it was gold. So This is, Chris, you have any thoughts on this? We're interrupting our flow here because we're going to do other silly shit here, but I wanted to get this out there because this is very interesting.
No, I mean, I think, I feel like whatever they could possibly do to mitigate whatever bad criticism they could get on launch is really only surface level at this point. Like I don't know what they would really be able to do short of gutting the entire way their in-game economy works, which would take probably a lot longer than people would assume. So I don't know about this one. Although the fact that there's no definitive date is interesting.
Yeah, it's especially interesting because their studio heads are gone too. So that whatever changes they're going to be making are without like the creative direction that made the game, basically, because the game was basically being handed off to bring through alpha and then get ready to go. Dustin, you have anything you want to add before we move on? I just wanted to point this out because this is a big piece of news.
Yeah, this is pretty confusing just thinking about what they're going to be able to do at this point, unless maybe there was more live service stuff that they kind of were keeping close to the chest at the moment, that they saw the reaction to something like a battle pass and always online and thought, we need to pump the brakes and figure out how we can reduce some of these elements. But like you said, like a lot of these things are pretty baked in at this point. I mean, I guess it's better now than later, so you don't have an Anthem like situation where you have to save the game But again, I don't know. The fact that it's there's no new time frame is pretty crazy. So maybe they really are planning on doing a lot of work, which is, dude, they already started the marketing cycle. PlayStation gave them a huge chunk of a state of play. So pretty bold move for them to do that, but hopefully it's the right decision.
All right. We are taking longer than even usual to get into the news. So I deleted most of the other stupid shit we were going to talk about this week, except for one thing. And then we're really going to get into the things we were going to talk about this week and start taking it a little more seriously. Bring a little more pep to the show, as we promised. By the way, I am in trepidation mode because I'm waiting for you guys don't care about football. Do you know who Aaron Rodgers is?
I know that name. Yes. Green Bay.
I have no idea.
Right.
Oh,
that's right. Green Bay Packers.
Wow.
He's one of the great quarterbacks. I would say he's one of the great quarterbacks playing right now. And I think no one would disagree that he's certainly easily in the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. He's played with Green Bay for I think it's 14 years. He's actually been with them even longer, but as a starter, it would be since 2008, I guess. And he's leaving the team, it looks like. And who is talking to him but my New York Jets? And the news can come at any second because they went out and flew out to see him. Apparently they're feeling good, according to reports. They're the only suitor. And I'm just letting you guys, we talk about shitting pants on this show quite a bit. That's one of the hallmarks of Sacred Symbols is shitting your pants. Well, I'm going to defecate all over the place if and when it happens. And it might happen live on the air. I have no idea. So we're going to wait and see. So that's actually how I saw it to begin with, because I was looking at Twitter, I must admit. But let's hear from Parker Lukenbach. I didn't want to delete this one because I thought this one was funny enough to share, because he's right about something here. Hey, Space Force Battalion. It's been a few weeks since the 5x playback speed debacle. I love that. We really do have to get some sort of lore going, some sort of book of
arcs.
lore, the various arcs. I was bringing up Code Jesse or whatever the hell thing we were talking about, or Jesse Protocol or whatever, when the guy was spoiling The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah.
For everyone. So he says, years ago, my brother was grinding for raid gear in Destiny for Vault of Glass. At one point, he watched the anime Code Geass, I think that's how you say it, while playing.
That's right.
But it wasn't on a laptop or a second TV. It was on his phone. For my question, did he watch the show? To this day, he says it's the anime GOAT. But did he watch it when his attention was divided between Destiny and watching it on a small screen? Thanks for helping us stay sane during commutes or nightmare shifts. You're very welcome, Parker. Thank you for writing in. Chris, did he watch it? If he was playing Destiny 2, but watching it on his phone, and he claims it's one of his favorite anime, but did he watch it? Did Parker's brother actually watch Code Geass?
This is a complicated answer, but
yeah, please.
If you're doing raids in Destiny, and you're watching something, no way you're watching that. Raids are very meticulous, and they're very demanding of your attention to the point where you can't. I don't know, man. You'd have to be top level, some kind of fucking wizard to be able to actually do a raid competently and watch something and absorb all that information. It's just not happening for the most. And I would be willing to bet that if I'm a betting man, I'm gonna bet you're not a wizard. So no way. If you were just doing normal open world stuff, running random quick little strikes, quick little crucible matches, fucking whatever, I could maybe believe that. But raids are so ridiculous. You have to scream at your teammates to do the right thing constantly. So no way. I don't buy this. You have not watched it.
Dustin, did he watch it? As someone who's watching an ambitious number of episodes of what is it?
One Piece.
One Piece. Yeah, sorry. I can't keep it all straight. It's too much. So,
first of all, either he's fluent in Japanese or he's watching the dub. So L on that, first of all. And then second, yeah, Chris is absolutely right.
Wow.
A raid is extremely difficult. And I don't know. I'm way particular about this to the point where Holly and I watched one episode of One Piece on the plane on the way to Houston. And of course, it was one of the best episodes of the show I ever saw. And that pissed me off because I felt like I didn't want to watch that on my iPad on a plane where I was uncomfortable. I would have way rather been on my couch with a nice drink or something like that. So that kind of annoyed me. So I didn't. There was no more One Piece on the rest of the trip because I just didn't want that repeat experience. So the thought of calling something the GOAT anime that you barely paid attention to, no. The things that you love deserve more respect than that.
Yeah, I'm bold enough to quote unquote watch YouTube videos while I'm playing my mindless games, like grinding in an RPG or whatever.
Yeah.
But these are things I'm not really watching. Like I listen to like a crime documentary, or it'll be a podcast, a Joe Rogan segment or something like that. But it would be audacious for me to say, like, put on The Leftovers and be like, I watched The Leftovers while I was playing Wild Arms. It's like, I don't think so.
No, absolutely not.
And I think this speaks up, dude. This is actually gonna be my topic on the next episode of Constellation, about trying to disconnect, because I am becoming hyper aware of how fucking technology addled my brain has become, to the point where I wasn't always like this. It wasn't always like this. And I'm in this unfortunate generation. You guys are kind of there, but not even really. Where like there really was a time and place in my life that I remember, and I remember existing, and where just nothing like this existed. And you were coming up with that brain at a really malleable time. And then the introduction of everything around us has made it feel like, do you think there were, I couldn't imagine this, a person in the 50s being like, I'm going to listen to the news on the AM radio while I read this book, because they have to maximize the time.
Yeah.
Because I think if anything, they were bored and there was not enough to occupy your time. So you kind of savored everything. And we are in this nutty time where I feel like I've corrupted the system myself with the way I interact with it. But that's why I think the whole, X speed, watching shows while you're playing games, like that's just no, like it's too much. And it reminds me, and it reinforces my need to want to just get away from all of it. Just be like, what the fuck are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And I'm as guilty as anyone, man. So
I specifically remember like playing video. Like I would never play video games and watch something at the same time. Like even when I was a kid, and I remember like playing Dragon Ball Z games on the PS2, and I wouldn't have like a portable DVD player open. Playing fucking, I don't know, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or some shit. Like I would just be doing whatever it is I was doing. So I still remember that very clearly. But like, yeah, it's a different time when that kind of happens while you're in high school. Like the whole like social media, internet shit. Although I would argue that, social media is way, way different than it was back then.
I was telling Holly last night that my problem is that sometimes I'll feel exhausted, and so I don't have enough attention to play a game. So I'll just watch something so stupid on YouTube that afterwards I think, wow, I really couldn't let my brain have a single thought. I had to avoid that, to the point where I'm, learning about, I don't know, crustaceans in the ocean or something. Like, and don't get me wrong, I like learning about weird stuff. Sometimes it's not. I'll watch a review of like an MKBHD video about an Android phone. Like, I'm never going to buy an Android. Why would I? What am I doing?
Yeah, that's a low, dude. Using Android is low enough. Watching a video about Android,
yeah,
that's another level.
Any MKBHD video, I feel like I gotta hit play on that.
There are some people in the audience that get really like earnestly upset, mad when we talk about Google or talk about Android. I don't know why. I mean,
it's hard to be inferior.
Yeah, I have no insight into Android at all. I've never used an Android phone in my entire life. My dad is the only person in my life that uses an Android phone, and so I leave him, like I've said, off of many text threads because I'm like, I can't take it.
That's
because
so funny.
Then it's like someone thumbs up something someone says, and then it says it in text. Betty Ann is thumbed up. That's like, nope, bye, Dad. And no matter how, and my dad has two phones, and I've tried to tell him like, why can you please? Even his wife uses, iOS. Like, please, God, please.
People say that's Apple's fault, though. They're the ones that are gatekeeping the iMessage standard or whatever. But
why would they give it up?
Yeah, exactly.
Because unfortunately, that level of social pressure certainly matters. I've actually read things. I don't know if there's been scientific studies, but there have certainly been op-eds and think pieces about the potential the implication of poverty or the implication of privilege that comes along with using one phone or the other in a school setting in America. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. You know, like for instance, I noticed like my nephews and nieces all use iPhones, and my siblings all use iPhones, and my parents, you know, like my mom uses it. Let's be clear, my mom has no idea how to use the iPhone. My mom is the only person in the world who's used an iPhone for more than 10 years. And every time she gets a new one, it's broken. And she's the only person that ever has problems with it. You know? Yeah. And when I lived with her those few months, when I first moved to Virginia, when I was waiting to buy a house, so I would be living, I stayed in a bedroom upstairs. She actually had a bedroom downstairs, so they would never come upstairs. But her fucking phone was so loud, and it was like that chirping noise, and it would go off no matter what. She was probably getting fucking Twitter notifications and messages and all, just constant. And every night I'd have to go down there and shut it off. And that's crazy. This day, that was 3 years ago. And to this day, I hear that goddamn noise when we're together. Like it's still just chirp. I feel like my stepfather must just be totally like, just tuned out. Just doesn't even hear anything anymore. Just doesn't even pay attention.
That's so funny. Like this whole conversation is bizarre to me because like I used to swap phones. Like if I had a phone, I would have an iPhone, and then like my iPhone would die or inevitably break. Or like there would be some software thing that happened that it would be like too slow. And then I'd be like, all right, let me see what's going on over there. And then we'd get an Android. And then I would use the Android for like however many years until that one died. And then I would be like, all right, let's see what's going on the iPhone side. And then I would swap between them every time a phone would die. The only time that broke that cycle was when I was in Las Vegas, drunk at like 2 p.m. and my phone exploded in the heat because it was like 120 fucking degrees in Las Vegas. I don't know what you people are doing over there, by the way, living there.
It's so hot. But it's so hot in that city. Oh my God. It's
stupid. Like I don't even understand how anyone's able to function in that kind of air and environment. But
down there, Palm Springs too. It's just the same shit.
But I was drunk at like 2 p.m. in Vegas, so I couldn't like, you know, I wandered over to it, and the phone was like, I had to like ask it. I had to like, hey Siri, direct me to Verizon Wireless because the screen wasn't working, and it would just give me like auditory directions. And I followed it, and I was like, I'm not in the right mind to research Android phones right now. And so like I just replaced it with an iPhone, and I haven't. My phone's broken right now. Like the screen's shattered, and I might check out what they're doing over there. But I don't know. I've never really had like. I think they're both interesting. The coolest thing about Android is that you could like really fuck with it in a lot of ways. But I mean, that's like really if you have the time or the wherewithal or even the patience to do that, which is admittedly pretty demanding. But
I don't even know what to do with an Android phone. When my dad hands me his phone, like I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do. I'm just that kind of guy. I'm like, I just totally, when I don't know something or I don't understand something, it's just I completely tune out to it. I'm just like, no, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't understand. When I get something like you have to assemble like a piece of furniture, I'm like, I don't think so.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I'm like, no, there's absolutely, it could be anything. I'm like, and Michael actually really loves doing that shit. She like dives into it and like delves into it. And I've known people like that, and that's cool. But for me, even if I get these like trivial things, I'm like, I'm just gonna like have someone do this because I'm not doing this.
I used to go to friends' houses. My friends would be like, "Hey, I got new furniture." I used to go over and like put it together with them.
Yeah, that's right. I've known people like that. I don't know. It itches something in people's brains.
Yeah, I don't know.
But for me, I see my whole thing is that I would fuck it up. And the few things that I put together, like I have a really nice elliptical now, like a professional elliptical. But my previous elliptical is a more commercial grade elliptical, and I put it together myself, and it sucked partially because I put it together. Like I know I fucked it up, you know. That's why I just don't even want. When people talk about, oh, hang your own TV, I'm like, are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea what would happen if I hung the TV on the wall? First of all, it would take me hours, and I probably would never actually do it. So there's just no way I can do this. So I'm just psyched out.
Not a fan of the TV on the wall, to be honest.
Really? I know we talked about it. I like it just because it's so funny how much space we've gained. But here's the thing that happens in reverse. I must say, Chris, is that my sister Dana lives in a house that was built like in the late 90s, and it's got one of those. And I remember these, and they were dope back in the day. Just for a minute though, where in their living room they have like the big alcove that you fit the TV into, like the old tube TVs into. And you would take the cords and put them like to this box next to it. So it was like very sleek. And if this was like 1998, 1999, you'd be like, oh, this is dope. But the advent of the flat screen TV, now they have to get us TV that's too small for the space because they have nowhere else to put it. You know?
That sucks.
And so it was like one of those very brief solutions to a problem that I think that the hanging the TV kind of just got to, which is this, that get this thing out of the way.
Yeah, I don't know. I just find that space that you would save kind of, because like you can't put a couch there because like they'd be under the TV.
Yeah, it'd be like you're at a movie, like the front row of a movie.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. I can see it both ways, but fewer things to dust.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. All right. What are we talking about? Is it time to move on? Yes. Let's get into the news now for real. For real. We whet our whistle with the word of Suicide Squad. What? Which is very weird. I'm still puzzled and thinking about that. How's that all going to work? What's that going to look like? We're talking about it now from the perspective of a Bloomberg article that might have a comment from WB in it, but I would assume that they wanted to have broken this news themselves. So that's interesting. And shout out to Jason Schreier for getting a nice scoop. But Jared wants to talk about something else. Now, I got to tell you guys a little story. And in fact, if you ever wanted to do the digital archaeology, boys, you could, because it'll be in the never-ending Google document that I use in the notes. Like, it'll just be in the previous versions of it. All of this stuff happened with Activision, Microsoft, and Sony this week. And I was like, God almighty, I can't take it anymore. And what happened was that in the UK for the CMA, so for their regulatory body, both Microsoft and Sony, the legal firms representing both, issued reports on the date listed, which was February 22nd. So we're recording this well afterwards. But on February 22nd, these were submitted to the British authorities, and they were published just a few days ago for public consumption. And I read them both, and I actually went through and started pulling everything that I thought was relevant out of them. And I did this just for Sony's side first. And I put it all in a document, like a Word document. And it was pages. And I just thought, eventually was just like, I spent like almost 2 hours doing this. And then I just deleted it out of the document. And I'm like, I can't, if I can't make this succinct enough to talk about on the show, it probably deserves its own episode of Sacred Symbols Plus, and maybe we can do that. But what I would rather do is two things. I'd rather talk about some of the things that were in there. If anything in there is interesting, there's certainly a comment purportedly said by Jim Ryan that I think we must talk about, which I think gives some interesting perspective into the story. But the second thing I want to do is I think kind of point people towards, I see Rick Hogue is back. Our friend Rick is back doing some content. He'll cover this much better than we're able to cover this here from a legal perspective, obviously. I'd rather just talk about it from a creative perspective. And if there's just anything that people have to say about this, I want to acknowledge that it happened. I want to acknowledge that this Jim Ryan quote is making the rounds, but I really felt almost broken trying to write about this last night because I get it already. I don't even care about what happens at this point. And I really never did to begin with. I just didn't think it was going to stick this much.
Yeah.
And I don't have anything to say about it. Like anything substantive to say about it. I have some things that I want to throw out there, but I don't know. So does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
That we talk about it in this way instead? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. So the one thing I want to start with here comes from Jared. And he writes into us and says, "Hey, Sacred Crew, what's the deal with LuLu Cheng?" So she's a C-suite executive and lawyer at Activision, like the current formation of Activision Blizzard. She has become a lightning rod for the AKB Activision acquisition. Jesus Christ. Can we just call it the Activision acquisition in recent months? Now she just spilled the beans on a conversation involving Jim Ryan in Brussels on February 21st, stating Ryan said, quote, "I don't want a new Call of Duty deal. I just want to block your merger," end quote. Not only is this not all that shocking to me that he would want to block the merger, but it also is odd timing coming on the same day as the Starfield delay. Is this intentional? Is she hurting or helping the merger? Thanks for the great content. I don't think Starfield, first of all, has anything to do with it. It's important to remember that Microsoft talks a lot about what its intentions with Activision, but these are still very separate companies operating separately. And Activision is operating on its own initiative. It wants the sale to be done on behalf of its stockholders. It has already sold the deal to them. Like the only thing that's holding it up are the economic and regulatory bodies around the world. So they want to get it done. So this LuLu Cheng character wants to help get it done. I thought this comment was interesting though, Dustin, and I wanted to go to you because presumably, and I don't know exactly how this would work or how you would get these records, especially in Europe, which is not nearly as open with things as the United States is with like freedom of information and all of that. And I mean that in terms of the Freedom of Information Act, not literal freedom of information. Yeah. But if this was said in some sort of meeting, I would assume this would be on the record and that we would get access at some point to that record. Therefore, she must be quoting him accurately. Otherwise, I think that would be insane. So I want to get that out of the way and say that I think that the way what she quotes Jim Ryan as saying is probably true. The question is like, what do you think about that? Because it does. Some people are saying it betrays why they were initially saying they were opposing the merger, but I think it just is accurate corporate and blunt speak for saying like, you don't understand. We don't care about any deal you can offer us. We're blocking this because I think from Sony's perspective, as I've said in the past, they realize that they really have nothing to lose. What's going to happen? They're going to take the games away from PlayStation. See, I think Sony realizes, and this is neither here nor there, but I think important that they realize Microsoft's been put in such a position as looking like a potential monopolist that any retribution on PlayStation and taking things away from them prematurely or fucking around with things will be like Sony just being like, see, you can't. So I think Sony's realized that they kind of have actually put themselves in a pretty sweet position where they don't have to do much of anything. They don't have to sign a deal because they don't need to. And they can stand in the way, not knowing if it's going to work or not, because they're still going to get those games either way. And so that's kind of, I don't know if I agree, if I agree that's solid, if that's solid reasoning on Sony's behalf, but I think that is their reasoning. And so let me kick it over to you. Do you have anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, this person, this LuLu Cheng, really interesting strategy that I don't really understand. Obviously, she's a lawyer, so she understands the legal aspects, hopefully more than me. But I think it's weird that she's saying stuff that was behind a closed doors meeting and then just quoting it and putting it out there. That seems odd, but I'm sure that they've war game to this and are trying to figure out how they can get the most positive PR out of this. But even then, when I think about it from that perspective, I have to agree with Jared that what Jim Ryan's saying is not shocking after we see continue over and over him or Sony just in general, like not accepting any deal from Microsoft regarding Call of Duty. So I don't really understand what the net positive of this is when really they don't need to convince the public. They need to convince these regulators, which I guess that there is public pressure, but I don't really understand why. So, and again, I think the other thing that's point is just, I saw some people when they were talking about this, like, whoa, he said that. It's like, yeah, of course he did. Every action that has led up to this has shown that this is exactly what Sony's strategy is. So I don't know. I'm mostly confused again, like I said, about why they would even say this. Because she's also the one that said the Sony is the best of us, or what was that weird quote? That was the really cringy thing.
The first of us or something.
The first of us, that's it. Yeah, just, I don't know. To me, this is kind of, and this doesn't have, I swear, this isn't from a console perspective about which side I hope wins or whatever. But I find this person is kind of getting annoying at this point in the way that they're talking online. I don't know. Again, maybe they have a strategy, but I don't see it.
Chris, you have anything you want to add about this? I have a few more things I want to say, but I wanted to make sure to hear from you first.
Well, I mean, I think you're right in the sense that they put themselves in a very specific position where, like, I mean, Call of Duty sells a ton on PlayStation, so why would Microsoft not want to sell their stuff on PlayStation anyway? They were definitely always going to get those games. And so it does behoove Sony to block. I guess what is shocking isn't necessarily that Jim Ryan believes this, or that Jim Ryan, his true feelings are, I don't want to do Call of Duty deal, I just want to block your merger. I think people are just surprised to hear it so bluntly, because a lot of corporate speak is is traditionally very, I don't know, gilded and, just very dressed up and, like we think it's best for our players. And it's like, no, yeah, it's not, I mean, it's not really,
Right.
like I don't know. My main concern with this has always been, and since day one has always been, if not Microsoft, then who will, come into ownership of Activision Blizzard? That's my main concern, because they're clearly looking to sell. They're clearly looking to merge. They're clearly looking for a buyer. And if not Microsoft, then the only real players left of any real consequence are Tencent. And that's worrying to me. So I just want to get this fucking done. I'm tired. We're all tired.
Yeah, I think in some way I'm thankful that this has gone on just from a content perspective, simply because we're waiting so long for PlayStation to even have an event. I mean, it's just so this is an interesting piece of intrigue. But so I've been writing some notes because there's just a few things I want to say, and then we can move on unless you guys want to follow up, which is totally fine too. I read both reports. I took notes, and I was trying to see like what Sony's arguments were and how Microsoft answers them. And Sony, I actually think, makes both some interesting points, but I also think betray their true feelings about the future commerce in gaming, the future economics of gaming. And so, I'll get into this. One of the things that comes up constantly if you read Sony's report is PlayStation Plus and Xbox Game Pass. And they bring it up over and over and over and over again. And they have actually like acronyms that they just throw around for, I think, multi-game subscription services, like MGS they call it, which is funny. They keep using this term MGS. I'm like, MGS in gaming is Metal Gear Solid. You can't be all right. All right. So nonetheless, they're talking about this over and over and over again. And it made me realize, wow, they are worried about Game Pass. And they are worried about this slow burn of just kind of pushing everyone over, and how I think Microsoft has made what I think is a logical choice in assuming that video games would go or will go the way every other thing has gone, which is towards a universal subscription service, bite-sized things, and making money on the edges. And I think the only argument against it is, can gaming withstand this? And my answer is, I don't think so. Not in the way that we currently understand video games. It'll make maybe more and more money. I think you'll get fewer and fewer games that you really care about. And that might be Sony's only argument against it. But one of the interesting things is that there are a lot of redactions in the documents. Not a huge surprise. And Sony specifically cites, although so much of it is redacted that we really can't quite get the feel, but you get a feel for what they're saying, which is, you're offering us. So Microsoft's offering a lot. They're offering 10 years of Call of Duty. They're offering it day and date on PlayStation Plus. So Sony can literally take it and say, we'll sell it on PlayStation Plus. Microsoft literally says, like, just put it on PlayStation Plus. But what people don't understand is that when you have, and this is what Sony, I think, gets into and what's redacted, is that when you're making these deals, and why we don't see the finer language between the two companies, is you don't just get access. You have deals with each other. And the deals are, could be on a case-by-case basis. So, for instance, Lilimo, my developer, doesn't have a fucking deal with Sony. We get their baseline deal, the worst deal you could possibly get, no doubt, 70-30. That's the worst you're going to be able to do on PlayStation and on other consoles too. And so Sony's redactions state things like, yes, we can have the game on PlayStation Plus at this price, and then they go in and say, which makes PlayStation Plus unviable. And there's like really interesting things in there like that. And so I think we have to get away from this maybe notion, if you want to look at it from Sony's perspective, this notion that, like, look, Microsoft is offering them the game. They're offering them parity. And Sony's saying, well, they're offering us parity, but what does it cost us? And we actually don't know. And they say that again about a la carte sales. In other words, game by game sales. They say again, you're offering us the game at this rate, which means this for us. So Microsoft, and what they're basically saying, and this is, I think, where you have to get really into the weeds with it, and why it might matter to them, is they're saying, listen, you're offering us these kind of deals that are already materially different from the deals we have with Activision as it currently stands. Nothing in our deal says you have to continue to offer us these deals. And in fact, you can extract more and more out of us the longer you go. There's nothing tying you to that. And it is interesting. So what they're saying is, yeah, it's easy for you to offer us a game. But what does it mean to get it? How do we get it? How much do we pay for it? What's the quality of it? I think Sony's getting a little silly saying that Microsoft would even maybe intentionally or knowingly let things slide in PlayStation versions of Call of Duty, which they do say in the document in so many words, that maybe there'll be a bug late in the game in the PlayStation version. And maybe there'll be, it's like pretty conspiratorial. And I don't believe that, but Sony does make an interesting point here. And this is something I never thought of. And I wonder what you guys think of this. They basically say Microsoft could promise parity between the two versions, but how could that ever be proven? And how could it be denied that Microsoft has the intuitive obligation to its own company to use its best resources, and in this case, they use the terms engineers, on their own projects? How could you even prove that? It's an unprovable thing. It's unknowable. And I never really thought about that. So if you guys out there want to take the time to read the documents, they're published by the British government, and you can just go find the actual PDFs, which is what I did. You'll find that there are some interesting tells about the way they feel about each other, the way Sony sees this going, the cost barriers to doing business on PlayStation Plus, and the cost barriers to buying games. When you're dealing with millions of sales on your console, you're not doing a 70-30 split. You're doing something else. And Sony is suggesting that these splits can be leveraged against them. So I encourage people to go read it. And that's kind of what I wanted to say. And Microsoft does offer a bunch of solutions in their side, which I think are worth reading as well. And what it seems like is that Microsoft's saying, like, we're going to give you the 10-year deal. We're promising parity. And one of the things I thought was interesting that I didn't really see reported very much was Microsoft says, and this is redacted, but you can see the beginning of it. Microsoft agrees to a third-party arbiter that will oversee all of this shit moving forward, that will ensure parity, redacted, right? So we don't really know how they would ensure to do that, but they're even proposing those remedies. One interesting thing that Sony says, though, is that they believe that two remedies are possible, that two remedies would be okay with them. One is that the deal is blocked. The other is that Activision Blizzard is broken up. And I was surprised to read that too. Sony's like, that's fine with us. If Microsoft really wants King more than anything, they can buy King. Call of Duty can remain Call of Duty could conceivably remain an independent company. In fact, Sony could invest in that company. And it sounded to me, Chris, to what you were saying with Tencent, it sounds like they're totally fine with that. They just want to make sure Call of Duty is not with Microsoft. They want it to be with an organization, either an independent, maybe a new independent Call of Duty company, or an independent venture that has no ties to either company, so that they continue to keep neutrality. And the other thing that they reiterate is that they just don't feel it's possible to make a Call of Duty clone, that they would just never be able to compete with it. Right. And that's reinforced even by Modern Warfare 2 sales. So I've just said a lot there. I don't know if either of you guys want to continue on that in any way, but I wanted to acknowledge all that's happening and get that out there. We're good?
Yeah.
I think, I think we're good. I think you covered it pretty well. I guess the question since you were researching, is just that we keep getting updated timelines on when things will happen. What's the next step at this point?
Well, now I think that there's recent reporting from Reuters suggesting that the deal is expected to go through in Europe, that might have some sort of cascading effect. But when people say the deal is going through, we have to remember the deal is not going to go through as is. And so for instance, Sony could refuse to sign the deal, but Microsoft already signed those deals with other companies. And it would be pretty silly to say, like, oh yeah, we'll bring it to Nintendo for 10 years, but we're going to keep it off of PlayStation. I think this is kind of the position Sony intentionally put themselves in, which I thought was maybe a little 4D chess-ish. However, I think that Sony makes really poor arguments when they talk about, they actually contradict themselves in their own report, because they talk about how unpredictable video games are, and how unpredictable the market is, and how a 10-year promise and all this parity promise, they mean nothing because of this, and this. But then they say, Call of Duty is unbeatable and we'll never be able to make a Call of Duty clone. Doesn't that predict the future? Doesn't that make the future quite predictable? I mean, that's a direct contradiction in Sony's argument. I think a direct contradiction in Microsoft's argument is this idea that they want to bring their games to everyone. If that's the case, then you know what you got to do. And we won't even reiterate it here. But if that's really true, then they've put themselves in a pretty interesting position. And so, that's basically it. We'll continue to follow this, and we'll talk more about it in the near future. All right. Dieter Holler wrote in and said, hi, CDC. Next big PlayStation showcase predictions. When will it happen? What will be revealed? Chris, play with this however you'd like. How are you feeling now? I mean, there's rumors of a pre-E3 event. We don't really know very much. In fact, there are no dated PlayStation 5 exclusive first-party games now, and very few. And really, when you think about it, basically only 2 known. I mean, Wolverine and Spider-Man, and I guess we know factions.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't know. My guess, just based on pure gut instinct, is probably like I would bet like May, or maybe like early or like late April. Like I feel like those are around the times, because that's like kind of leading into E3 season. There's obviously going to be like a big Summer Games Fest thing or something Jeff Keighley oriented to kind of like soak up the summer months. Where I think maybe like more information could be given, or like maybe the games could be a little bit more dived into, a little bit more specific state of plays. But I don't know, because the last one we just had one, so like it wouldn't be immediately.
Well,
right?
we didn't have a
showcase. We didn't have a showcase. As far as like a proper PlayStation showcase, dude, I don't even know, dude. That is like. I'm not even convinced it's E3. I'm not even convinced we're going to see one this year. Like, I feel like they've been so... When was the last PlayStation showcase?
2021.
Yeah.
I think, right?
So, like, what's even... I mean, it feels like ages ago. We've gotten many state of plays. We've gotten some state of plays that were really good. Some state of plays that were really like, some really, really singular-minded focused showcases. But, like, I don't know, a proper PlayStation showcase... I feel like, I don't know.
How could it not be soon? I mean, it's been so long. Like, that's why I think it has to be this year.
Well, maybe the idea is that they feel like they don't need to do that anymore. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the same thing with E3, where it's like, you know, E3 happens once a year, and E3 happens once every year until it doesn't. You know, and then like, you know, you had the PlayStation Showcase with that kind of coincided with, you know, a bunch of stuff. Whereas now it's like, I guess what lends to your argument is the fact that we don't really know much about the future. And like, there's really only 3 things that we know for sure are coming, in the form of obviously Wolverine, Spider-Man, and factions in some way. So I guess there is room for a showcase to kind of shed some light on the further future, on some of the stuff that we don't know about, or even some of the stuff that we've heard whispers about, but don't really have concrete information on. And in that case, I don't know. I feel like you're more likely to hear about this after E3 or like E3. What do we call
June? We just call it June now.
Yeah, like summer. Sometime after that summer games kind of information drive. Like maybe like I'm thinking like maybe August or like maybe September for like a showcase. And that's like
I think it's too late.
I think that's a far cry. I don't know, man, because like what else? What's left?
Well, because I think they have to really show Spider-Man, and I think that's got to happen in like some real way.
Well, do we know when Spider-Man's coming out?
This year.
Well, yeah, but we don't like know.
When do I think Spider-Man's coming out? The same day Starfield's coming out, but we're gonna talk about that in a little while. But yeah, I don't. Well, I'm curious, Dustin. Let's get your take before we move on. I mean, what do you think is going to be there, or when do you think this is going to happen? I know that I think Jeff Grubb has reported that it's going to happen in May. He's typically right about things. Things are very flexible. There have been a lot of reports about Sony events that have not happened. So, and I think that things are a little bit in stasis because I think they don't want to make themselves look bad during the Activision situation as well by talking about exclusive games, even if they're more legitimate exclusive games, not your Final Fantasy 16s. But I think they need to, I personally believe, Dustin, that they need to have some sort of big pop. I feel like there is some sort of malaise in the hardcore base. And I think that the sales show a very strong, I mean, the sales for PS5 are through the roof right now, murdering hundreds of % year over year up with new games coming out and the availability of it. And I think that they got to keep that momentum going by showing the games. We just simply don't know enough about future games. And so that's why I think, well, I appreciate Chris's opinion. I just don't agree at all. I feel like it would be fucking catastrophic if they didn't have something to say in the next 90 days, you know, like, because we are literally floating through a space where we just don't even know anything. Spider-Man 2, 2023. Okay. Faction sometime. We have Helldivers 2 is clearly ready to go. Part of the trailer leaked like months ago. So what's going on with Helldivers 2? What's going on with Twisted Metal? What's going on with Project Bates? And then what about some of the stuff we don't know about at all that hasn't leaked? I just feel like it's time to go.
Yeah. Well, let's look at some data here. So on the State of Play website, you can see all of them since 2019 with when they happened. So I'm just going to read through when they happened. Okay. Starting with March 25th, 2019. I'll just say the month. Here's when State of Plays have happened. March, May, September, December, February, April, May, July, October, February, March, and then June 2nd, 2022. So, and
wait, there was like a March to March?
Yeah, that was okay, March 9th, 2022. And then the one after that was Hogwarts.
Okay.
So there was a specialized State of Play.
They have said nothing. That's your point.
So, yeah. So, but it seems like there are a few random June, like I'm trying to figure out, let me see when that June was, or July 8th, 2021. That was actually a Deathloop focused State of Play. So let's not even count that one. But I think the clear point is that Sony really seems to ramp up in the spring and the fall. So I would expect there to be something else within like pretty soon, like you're saying, Colin, in 90 days. But then I expect they don't want to share the summertime with anyone else. They want exclusive eyes on them. And so I would expect something soon where we can kind of detail the rest of the year and maybe a little bit of next year. And then there was no showcase last year at all, which is, I think at the time we were really expecting something at the time. But if there is a big showcase, I would think that would be September, kind of after the E3 season or whatever we want to call it. And then, so yeah, I would expect something soon, maybe not a showcase, but another State of Play, kind of, like I said, detailing Spider-Man. Maybe we get more Silent Hill info, stuff that we already are mostly aware of. And then the blowout one is September or October even. That's when you get like your specialized trailer for Spider-Man in that showcase. Kind of like how we got that final God of War trailer that was the hype up trailer that everyone was into. That's where that would be. Yeah,
I feel like could be right. I mean, for me, I feel like May is safe. I feel like, and I think maybe you do it in two bursts, like you're noting, like Spider-Man 2, Factions, Helldivers 2, Final Fantasy 16, and maybe a couple of odds and ends in the spring. Show those off in a deep way with some new announcements, blah, blah, blah. Second half of the year, to your point, this is when I think you talk about Wolverine. This is when I think you talk about maybe what's next from this studio. We have a bunch of these second party kind of things culminating in inevitable announcements of games as a service. We don't know where those are going to fit in as well. We don't know if Factions is going to be the first one of those as well too. So I'm very interested to see how this all goes, but I think that I feel like they are part of their viewpoint has to be reinforced by seeing games sell so well and them saying so little. And I don't think it's the crude finances of it. I don't think they give a shit about how much they're spending on, for say, advertising a game. I think what they care about is like, is what we're doing working? Is there a certain je ne sais quoi, like some sort of mystique around PlayStation because it says so little? The less we say, the more we sell. We are saying nothing, and we're selling 400% more consoles this year than we are last year.
Yeah,
so why would we say anything? And there might be something to that.
Well, that's kind of the key point of the how I'm thinking about it, where it's like they've clearly just recently met demand. They're finally, these consoles are finally out in the wild. They're selling a bunch of early PS5 titles that didn't really have a chance to sell because there weren't really many people buying the machine or able to come across the machine. So those sales are doing well. And they also run the risk of kind of shooting themselves in the foot if they say something, if they say anything during this merger situation. I think the merger situation really fucks everything up as far as like scheduling, which is why like I feel like the timing of these showcases and State of Plays might be a little bit unconventional, and what might be in them might be a little bit tailored specifically for the environment that the legal fight is happening in. And so for me, it's like, I don't know, I could see like a State of Play going super soon, but like a full on proper showcase, if we get one at all, I would be, I'd bet alongside with Dustin, like I would guess like September or like late August or something like that, like something like really like on the cusp of. I would imagine you get it before Spider-Man 2. I think you would show. Like I don't think you're going to get a showcase after Spider-Man 2 comes out necessarily. At least not like.
But surely
like
we agree.
One.
Surely we agree. The three of us anyway. Spider-Man 2's got to be shown soon, right? I mean that has to be shown.
Yeah, in some capacity
and dated.
Yeah. And dated, yeah. I would bet that it'd be dated probably in whatever the next thing we get is. Like, be that whether it's a State of Play or like a whatever. I think the next thing we see about Spider-Man 2 will be a release date.
It's got to be, unless they don't intend on releasing it this year, which is possible. I still think it's time. I mean, I think that the Insomniac's a very efficient studio. I do know that there was, Miles Morales as an interstitial, but I think they'll probably be ready to go, and it'll be time to date it. And in fact, this goes into what I wanted to discuss next, and we'll get into this here with Victor Blomberg, who wrote into us and said, "Hi, Sacred Crew. With Starfield being delayed to September 6th, do you think it is poised to end up in a head-to-head battle against Spider-Man 2? If so, how do you think the attention will be divided amongst the gaming community? Will it be another Horizon Elden Ring situation where Spider-Man totally dominates due to its sheer quality and brand recognition? I wouldn't be so sure that one would dominate over the other, to be perfectly honest with you. But I'm curious what you guys think of this. For the Xbox fans and listeners out there that are listening, Starfield has been dated later than people had thought, but I thought that was pretty obvious at this point that it wasn't going to come out anytime soon when they just refused to put a date on it sooner. Of September 6th. I know that falls outside of the 12-month guarantee that was made at the last showcase for Xbox. I think that's maybe another black eye for them, but quality is what matters most. And I think this game matters a great deal. And I'm going to get into that with our next question, but I'm curious what you guys think about the potential of Spider-Man 2 and this Starfield Xbox exclusive. It will be on PC as well, going head to head with each other. And I wonder, Dustin, let's go to you first. What do you think about my idea as a premise I was going to say, which is that I think Sony should release Spider-Man 2 the same day. I think that like they often find themselves in the worst spot with this situation, whether it's with Horizon 1 or Horizon 2 and other things. And I think you can show in a really aggressive posture that reinforces your business model of buying games and high quality and just kind of prodding them. I think that would be an interesting corporate move. And so I wouldn't personally be surprised at all if the release date was totally right around that's September 7th release date. That might have always been the intention and they're not going to move it. But I'm wondering what you think about those two games potentially going head to head, because they are certainly marquee titles.
I disagree. I think that they'll release it in November, kind of around the time that they release God of War. I think that's a fun idea to think about them going head to head, but I just don't think it really makes sense from a business perspective, especially because this is going to be a huge holiday seller. They probably want to have it closer to Christmas when people are thinking about buying presents and thinking about buying PS5s. You can get a nice bundle with the PS5 going around that time as well. September, I think, is a little early for that. Yeah. And I think that just as much it could be a show of confidence, I don't think they care about that. I think they care about selling the most amount of copies of a game they possibly can. And they want people at a time when their attention may possibly not be divided. And so, maybe, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I would lean more towards November.
Yeah, the one thing that makes me feel like you make a good argument and could be right is the whole idea of the sunk cost, that most people, and by most I mean a vast majority of the millions of people that will play Starfield, are going to get it on Game Pass. And that includes what I would assume are going to be millions of new subscribers, maybe several million new subscribers. And I don't know if Sony wants to stand in the way of that with a marquee title, because it's not as compelling an argument as saying $70 for Spider-Man or $70 for Starfield. It's actually not that. It's going to be $70 for Spider-Man or $15 or $1 or whatever for Starfield. And I think that might be like, when you war game it out, might be the calculus to say, like, maybe we want to stay away. But I'm wondering, Chris, what you think about the idea of them going head to head and kind of trying to take advantage of that and go on the offense for once, as opposed to kind of being victimized as they've been with the Horizon games.
I think it's a fun idea, but I also don't think. I mean, with Horizon and man, poor Gorilla, because like the thing with the Horizon, and even I think one of the kill zones before it, going head to head with Halo 2, is just like, these are very similar games in a lot of respects. They're third person open world action RPG combat games, and as far as Spider-Man and Starfield go, I really don't think either one risks cannibalizing the other because they're so different and they cater to such remarkably different audiences. I'm sure there's obviously going to be overlap, people like us who are probably like more interested in both of them because we're like into the industry and into the medium. But, I would be willing to bet that the overwhelming majority of people who are really, really excited to play Spider-Man are probably not the types of people who would be lining up at the door to play Starfield necessarily. And I feel like that's probably vice versa. They're very, very, like, one's a first person, Bethesda RPG and the other one's a fairly linear open world, like, single player, potentially co-op, who knows, superhero game. I just don't think if they were to go head to head, I don't think it would really benefit them much because there's not a win there. Especially because of the way Microsoft like kind of calculates sales and all that stuff. It's just like it wouldn't really like. I don't think they would find themselves in a situation where they would blow out Starfield in the same way that Elden Ring just happened to blow out Horizon, just because the nature of those games are a lot more similar, and the audiences are probably a little bit more cross core. So I think September is probably like a good time for like maybe like Helldivers, honestly. Like something kind of like to tide you over until like, the bigger stuff is coming in November. I think Dustin's right in that November is probably going to be the time that Spider-Man comes out. It's just like prime Black Friday time. It's prime Christmas time. It's Spider-Man. So it's going to clearly dominate the conversation around that time. Where September is just like a little bit more free flowing. Now it could be that Starfield gets delayed again.
Yeah. I consider that too.
Into November. That's very possible. And then that'll be like its own interesting thing. Like, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that because I know that, and we could talk about it based off this question from Matt Vigo that I thought wrote in, just an interesting, simple question. He says, the stage is set. Starfield versus Spider-Man 2 will be the big fall showdown. Although these are entirely different games, they are no doubt going to be compared endlessly across the internet. So let's embrace it. Which game is more important for its respective platform's future? And which will have the better reception from critics? Oh, thanks, and have a wonderful weekend. I think this is an obvious one. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Starfield is way more important to Microsoft than Spider-Man 2 is to Sony, but I think Spider-Man 2 probably has the biggest shot at being, objectively probably like I would bet that Spider-Man 2 is like over a 9, or at least like I would think or at least the critical reception of it. Not just because Insomniac is, I would argue, probably PlayStation's most important studio, and they pretty much always nail it with like very, very few exceptions, if any. But also Spider-Man is just a beloved character that everybody just kind of gravitates to. And I, like, even if Spider-Man 2 did somehow disappoint in some way, I feel like there's only so far that it could fall because it's a Spider-Man game, if that makes sense. I know that that's probably like a little bit too, maybe that's overvaluing the IP or maybe overvaluing the character, because there are definitely some Spider-Man games that are not good. Like, the Amazing Spider-Man games over by Beanox back in the day weren't really beloved, and I think Edge of Time and those games weren't as well received. But I mean, if this is even if this is just the same game as Miles Morales with like a new story, I feel like people are still going to love it because that game as a baseline is already so good and people just want more of it. If the same thing is true for Call of Duty, where people are just fine kind of running through the same exact fucking game over and over again, why wouldn't they? Like, why wouldn't that extend to something like Spider-Man, which undoubtedly will be a lot more improved and have a lot more new things added than any given, annualized title. I don't know. I think Spider-Man's just set to succeed.
What do you think, Dustin? Do you think, or to Matt Vigo's inquiry here about which game's more important or better reception? Talk to me a little bit about your feelings.
Yeah, Chris spoke pretty extensively on Spider-Man, so I'll take the flip side with Starfield. This game is a big unknown for me. In fact, I feel the same way about this game, sort of the same way I feel about Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, in that both of them are games that I feel like I should be more excited about than I am, just because I don't really know what to think of them. Particularly, we'll talk about Starfield, is that this is a company that has a lot to prove at this point, which is crazy, from the company that made Skyrim and Fallout, or Fallout 3 in particular, and along with Fallout 4, is that they have had a bad few years now, particularly, and I know with Fallout 76 that the main team didn't make it. I don't care. They wheeled out Todd Howard to present it, and they put their name on it. So I think there's at least some kind of ownership about it.
Yeah.
They have a lot to prove. They're going out with a new IP. It's not a Fallout game. It's not an Elder Scrolls game. And so I think they know that pressure on what this game needs to be. And with that, with, you know, a company that needs to prove itself, I think there's a huge potential for this game to be insane, like incredibly good. An Elden Ring like moment where it's like, man, everyone, even if you weren't interested, you need to check this out. That's what I hope for, because I love I loved back then. I really did love Bethesda games, but at the same time, the recent track record doesn't necessarily have me all that confident. So it is important. It's absolutely important for Xbox right now, and it's not that, you know, they've had some interesting stuff with Hi-Fi Rush and stuff like that, but this is the game that I think a lot of people are riding on. It's a lot of, you know, people have been waiting for this for so long. And so, yeah, there's a lot riding on this. And I think that it's also worth saying that if this game is amazing and it does have that like conversation pop to it, that this is going to be a system seller for them coming right into the holiday season. And this could be a game that could convince people that they're happy with their PlayStation 5, that they need to go get an Xbox to play this game. So yeah, absolutely, a lot is riding on it for sure. But like Chris said, with Spider-Man 2, I think that it would be disappointing if this game came out kind of, we'll say Sony lackluster, like an 80 or something like that. But I don't think it would slow down the momentum, really. Yeah.
There's also just the reality of, I mean, I see a lot of people kind of disappointed that Starfield is delayed, but like, let me tell you, I wish they treated Halo with this amount of respect, where they just delayed it until it was ready. And so like, I honestly feel like Halo is probably like a big part of the story too. Whereas like, you know, that game is good, honestly, but they fucked it up because they put it out way too early. And the goodwill is kind of gone. The first impression is really the most important impression. And I think after Halo, I think they know that. And I think they understand how much pressure is riding on Starfield. I think they understand that they can't put that game out before it's absolutely ready, in a way that they might have been a little bit flippant about before. Because no way they haven't examined what happened there. And we're like, okay, we can't let that happen again. So I don't know. I mean, who knows? Who knows if Starfield even comes out this year? Even if it's delayed another year, even after this, I would say, like, look, accept that, please.
What a brutal.
You don't know how bad
that would be for them, man.
It would be very brutal, but accept that.
Yeah,
because you have no idea how bad it could be. Good Lord.
Well, this is, I mean, to his inquiry about which game is more important, I think we all agree, and I totally agree. Starfield is way more important, but Starfield, I feel like, is actually so important to Microsoft and to Xbox that I cannot possibly believe that it's going to be anything less than great. I have to believe that they know that thing cannot come out now without looking and running right, without playing right, because it's going to be under a microscope, and people are waiting, and they're waiting to justify their investment in this machine. Right. And if they don't, so that's why I just think all signs point to greatness, because if they don't, Chris, I would say, like, you know, you got to start talking about like what is going on fundamentally going on over there, you know?
No, a million percent. But yeah. I would also, I mean, how do you feel like that those expectations might it seems like a double-edged sword, kind of. You know what I mean? Because I would argue that Starfield has. It's not necessarily at the same echelon, but it's approaching that level of like a Half-Life 3 type situation where it's like this needs to be really amazing to the point where like I wonder if it comes out and even if it is great, if it's just not good enough based on how important it is. You know what I mean? Like even if like let's say like if this game came out in a vacuum, like out of nowhere, like Bethesda just put out Starfield like many, many years ago, like 2 months after they announced that it was real. And it was like a 9 out of 10, like 9.5 out of 10 or whatever. And then like that same exact game came out in September after many, many years of delay and after many, many months of hardship for Xbox and after many, many, games are pushed out and like Everwild is kind of on the back burner and all these other things are like Perfect Dark is kind of like on the fritz and all of these other problems. That same exact game comes out with so much writing on it that it can't help but be looked at unfavorably in comparison to how important it is for the overall brand and the overall machine and ecosystem. High expectations are like a really, it's a tricky thing to manage. So I don't know.
It is. I think here's my thing is that if I think my experience with Bethesda Game Studios games being Fallout 3 and which I platinumed in Skyrim, which I played for 20 hours or so. I'm probably not even, so I'm not like super into their games at all, but they're all about wonder and mystery and intrigue and just the next quest. What's in the next building? What's in the, like
yeah.
I remember that feeling of playing those games so well because it's unlike a lot of other games. And I think if they can recapture that in a modern, in some sort of modern sense that they're going to have to define with this game, then they might have something really, really huge on their hands. I mean, that's the other side of the coin that I think people aren't maybe looking at thoroughly is that this might be huge. I mean, Starfield might be fucking huge. And that's entirely possible. I mean, this could be a complete game changer for Xbox, a complete game changer for Game Pass, and really continue that upward trajectory and that slow erosion of the idea of buying a la carte games and really giving people true long lasting value, not only with the core game, but with the inevitable expansions. So I try to see both sides of it, but I see a situation where if this doesn't go right, the doom black pill shit about Xbox is going to be worse than ever. And
oh yeah.
And I will say this, that, and this is just an obvious prediction, my friends, that the discourse around this game is going to be fucking insufferable.
Oh yeah,
I know it.
Yeah,
of course it is. Just absolutely insufferable because there is so much riding on it. But I will say this: I feel like they are setting the stage for a 30 frames a second Xbox Series X release, with kind of some of the things I think Todd Howard said even on podcasts and his various like media appearances recently. I know he was on Lex Friedman. So that's not good.
That's crazy to me.
I'm playing a game like no offense, like Forbidden West is the most beautiful game I've ever played. It runs at 60 frames on PS5. I'm doing crazy ass shit, sliding around, fucking around, murdering these dinosaurs. It's just this kinetic, beautiful experience. I'm sorry, you have to do it like that.
Yeah.
So that to me is not a good start, but I'm hoping for the best for Starfield. And I'm telling you guys, like if I were forced to put money on it, I would say it's going to be great, because if it's not, man, oh no.
Yeah.
That's a body blow for sure. Like total.
Yeah. It's not ideal. 60 frames to me is really, really important. I understand it's not the kind of game that necessarily benefits greatly from it, but I think we're in a generation now where everything else is 60 frames per second. And if you're not, it's going to stand out way, way more. I feel like this kind of shit was acceptable on the 360 because so much was 30 already and it was fine. But now that everything is 60, dude, I'm playing Destiny right now at 120, 30 ain't going to cut it, even if it is a slow RPG. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully they can get that working, but
I'm wishing Bethesda the best. It is weird, right? How much things have changed. They've stayed very static, and I think that I think they rode, well enough on a very specific style of game that didn't evolve very well. They're like a broader and bigger version of Telltale to me, in the sense that they just didn't take the time to tend to their technology, and they started to get exposed really badly. And of course, I always point to 2015 as being the catastrophic year for them, because they're preempted by Dying Light. They're preempted by The Witcher 3. Fallout 4 comes out and everyone's like, I don't think so, man. Like, it did well enough and people liked it and people played it and I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it too.
But I remember playing it for a couple of hours and I was like, there's no doubt that this is a step backwards from what I was just playing. And they definitely can't run the risk of doing that again. So we'll see what happens. And by the way, let's remaster Fallout 3. Let's prime the internet with the wonders of Colin Moriarty, the Megaton bartender, once more. And
I gotta say,
holding up again.
It would be really awesome to play like something like Fallout 3 or even, forgive me for saying this, Skyrim again, without having those like loading doors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like without those loading screens, having like a truly seamless.
Like bouncing in and out. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, if they didn't remaster Skyrim 5 million times already, I would suggest maybe doing something with that. But I don't know.
That's what they say. That's what they say Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be like, which sounds fucking dope. This idea of just like having, maybe you can't go into every building, but being able to go into many of them and just have this seamlessness would be cool. Amazing. That would be like a dream. So we'll keep an eye on all of this. I'm wishing Bethesda the very best with Starfield. I hope they deliver for the Xbox fans and the PC fans out there. I'm sure the game's going to be awesome on PC as far as fidelity is concerned. I think where it's going to get stinky is with the Series S.
Yeah.
But they'll have to wait and see. And I still stand by that we'll one day get Starfield on PlayStation in the form of a bespoke Game Pass in the years to come. But we'll see what happens. All right. Let's get into some of these smaller news items, my friends, and just get through them quickly. We don't have to speak extensively on each of them, but I wanted to enter them into the Sacred Symbols record, the most important record on Earth. NME.com, which I don't talk about very much anymore. They were bigger back in the day. I don't know what happened to them. But they say Ubisoft reportedly closing down some European offices in reorganization. And since they're European, they spell organization with an S, which is just brutal. And it says Ubisoft is reportedly shutting down offices across Europe, with the company telling NME it is working on a strategic reorganization of its European subsidiaries. And so they note that a Reset Era, so Reset Era being the gaming forum, had a user that said that they received an email that they're an employee at Ubisoft Benelux, which would be Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, and that they were closing that office entirely. And this apparently is going to affect a bunch of different things in Europe as they centralize. We've long said on the show, or at least I have, that their headcount is way too big. There are way, way too many people working at Ubisoft, and that has to be rectified. And by way too many people, I'm talking about nearly 20,000. I think that number probably is going to ultimately be cut in half, if not more than that, when they're all said and done, sadly. It's just Ubisoft as an organization, I do not know how they support a headcount that large, except for the fact that they are very international, and that it's just far cheaper to do businesses in places like India and Singapore and Eastern Europe. And that's where they're going to kind of centralize maybe their headcount from then on. So I just wanted to note that. It's not clear what would be affected, but yeah, our best to those laid off. And shout out to NME, who we don't hear from very often. I do want to hear from you guys about this, though, for sure. Hogwarts Legacy, which is selling an insane amount of copies on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PC. It's coming to PlayStation 4, but it's been delayed again and will now come out May 5th. So people will remember that originally there was supposed to be complete parity between all the versions' release dates. So PS4, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, and Switch. And then PS4, Switch, and Xbox One were kicked away. Switch was kicked away so far that I don't think it was ever dated again. And then the PS4 and Xbox One versions were dated for a more imminent time and then pushed back even again a couple more months to May 5th. This seems to matter a great deal because they've sold all these copies on only current gen consoles, and there's probably a lot of people waiting to buy it. And I can only imagine how well it will sell on Switch. But my big question here, Dustin, is how it's going to run on these consoles. And this is something I said when we talked about playing the game, and I know you're going to do the spoiler cast and review discussion, so you'll get into this much deeper, but on Sacred Symbols Plus. But I was playing it on PS5 and wondering if this game is stopping me from walking into places and doing 5-second load screens and shit like that, what is this going to be like on PS4? If this game has this level of pop in and is dropping frames in combat like it was for me on PS5, what is it going to be like on PS4? What is it even going to be like on Switch? What do you think about this delay? And I wonder if maybe they just canceled the Switch version entirely at this point, if they can't even get the PS4 version right.
Yeah, well, I think that I would expect that this version does, like you said, have a lot more loading. I think we can kind of get a clue on what these versions will look like based on the Xbox Series S version, which I've seen some YouTube videos that there are specific doors that you need to load in and out of Hogwarts with. So I definitely expect it to be a way worse experience. I'm guessing that a big factor with this delay, and this really is I'm coming from this from an angle of the actual technical aspects of these devices. The Xbox One is not as powerful as PS5. And so I'm wondering how big of a hang up that is for them right now, figuring out how to get this running on Xbox One. PS4 also could be an issue. And like you said, a lot of it could come down to the fact that they have to run these off mechanical hard drives and not SSDs, which just the level of difference in the speed of the loading of the assets is it's huge. It's totally different. So you're going to see a lot more loading. And Colin, like you're saying about as far as asset pop in and out, the file sizes on these versions is going to be much higher too, just in order to get quicker access to some of these assets. They're going to have to duplicate it in a lot of ways. So I don't know. I think they will be able to get this running. It's probably going to be 30 FPS, obviously a much lower resolution, but the Switch version, I guess I get, is the number one question on how they're going to be able to pull this off. Obviously you see games, there are games that the miracle ports, stuff like Witcher 3 and stuff like that while I think they don't appeal to us on this show and people who care about fidelity, a lot of people do like those versions, because if you're playing them on a small screen, a lot of those things that don't look as good kind of can be masked through that lower resolution on the smaller screen. So I think it still could be possible, but I think it'll definitely be a much lower quality experience.
I've been watching Micah play Fire Emblem Engage on Switch, and there's like that. I thought that game was running at 60 frames when I was looking at it. It actually looks really good, but because it's a great looking. It looks awesome. So there are ways to massage it so that it's not so jarring. Because I just think there are so many. I talk about that jarring effect I get now when I play games, where I just notice it so instantaneously that would be so hard to play. But I know that they're going to be very commercially eager to spread the field with Hogwarts Legacy. They've made all of their money back and then some, and so now it's just all profit and to get these things out there as best they can. And congratulations to them on their continued success over there at Avalanche. All right, I wanted to ask you guys about this. We've had PSVR 2 for a while. Chris, you got yours? Did you get yours sorted?
Yeah, it's actually it actually got here last night. I haven't really had a chance to fuck with it.
Okay, cool. So we can revisit this when you have more time to play it again, but and we can still talk about it now as far as what we think is going to happen now that we've messed with it from some perspective. But Video Games Chronicle reports Sony believes PlayStation VR 2 has a good chance of outselling the original. And so they listened in on a Morgan Stanley technology, media, and telecom conference. And Hiroki Totoki, who is the CFO of Sony, was, according to Video Games Chronicle, asked to evaluate the PSVR 2's launch and what the company's expectations for the hardware are going forward. He said, quote, "We are very happy to launch VR2 on PS5. VR1, we sold over 5 million units, and I think we have a good chance to exceed that amount with PlayStation VR2, end quote. And it says, Totoki went on to reference forecasts that the overall VR market could be one of the largest growth areas in the media and entertainment segment during the first half of this decade. My anecdotal experience with PSVR 2, or I guess like kind of my interaction with its brief post-release period, has been different, Dustin, in that I feel like no one is talking about this thing at all. And they cut their, remember they were going to ship twice as many units apparently, and they cut that in half, and then they denied that though. Yeah, they denied, and they had a closed pre-order that they ended up opening up. Anyone can pre-order a PSVR 2 right up to when it came out. very easily. There was no limit to the stock. And I just feel like it's not being chatted about too much, even with this big first party game on it in Horizon Call of the Mountain, which I think is pretty good. I mean, I think it's pretty limited, but it's fun. It's an interesting game. I don't know if it's the price. I don't know what it is, but and Sony hasn't said a word about how well it's sold, and I think that's obviously something they would say if they had some good numbers to say. So I was surprised that they were so bullish, because for me, I'm feeling the exact opposite, wondering if there's some sort of limitation that this thing is maybe just a false start and should just be, is ultimately not going to pan out.
Yeah, I think that there could be some element of that. I think that, I don't know. To me, I think that doing a more low-key launch for this kind of product makes sense. It costs more than the system itself, which there's so many. I don't really want to get into the pricing, but I was thinking about it, and from other stuff that I've listened to and hearing people talk about it on other channels and stuff like that, it's really not a bad price when you compare similar headsets on PC. But either way, you're only going to reach a niche part of your audience that's interested in this. And so I can see them wanting to think like, we don't need to blow our load completely early on. We can kind of sell the hardcore early on and work out a lot of the bugs and kind of, get the most amount as far as the price is concerned, and then start to fill out the library, maybe eventually do a price cut, do some big other game conversions. I think, because I think that's one thing that's clear with the strategy right now, is that the three big games they had at launch are GT7, which is a game that's fully playable both in VR and normal, Resident Evil 8, which again is a conversion game, and then Call of the Mountain, which is a full-scale VR game. So 2 of those games are conversions. And so I'm wondering if they're looking at that like, okay, PS5 now has the power that when you play a game in VR, you don't immediately think, "Ew, this is stinky." That's something I think was undersaid both by me and by other people that are talking about this headset right now, is that when we put on PSVR 1, it was immediately noticeable that it was a huge downgrade from standard PS4 graphics, that we were getting some early PS3 style graphics in order to hit that level of fidelity and performance needed for VR. But now with PSVR 2, I'm not saying that we're getting full PS5 quality graphics, but the difference is much, much smaller. And I think that's worth pointing out. So going back to what we were originally saying, which I kind of got off on a tangent there, is that I think it's okay that this launch is small. I think that it was going to be a hard sell no matter what at the price point.
Yeah.
And with PSVR 1, they can slowly reduce the price, start to bring in some more marquee titles. And that's probably, we're talking about state of play and showcases. It is essential that VR is not an afterthought for these if they want to outsell the original PSVR and really make this one of the verticals that Sony sits on right now, or PlayStation sits on. So, and I think that a lot of people that did invest know that right now. It's like, okay, pretty good launch. We got some surprisingly awesome stuff that was way better than I think people expected. But what is next? That's an important question, not only for the people invested, but the people that are thinking about investing. A lot of people held off because they were like, okay, what's after this though? Because we don't really know. And I guess that includes also the standard, PS5 non-VR games as well. So that's why I think it's even more essential that we at least hear something soon.
Yeah, fair enough. Chris, we'll hear from you next week whenever you're ready to talk about PSVR 2. Because I'm curious to hear what you think about using it, and if you also struggle to find the sweet spot. And I've been reading so much and getting so much information about my own experience with VR 2. I messed with it a little bit more this past week, but not really. I'm not that enthusiastic about it because I feel like I'm not able to see exactly what I'm supposed to be seeing. And I don't know if it's the unit or if it's just me. A lot of people are saying it's me, but if it's me, that's a big problem, man, because we're all unique like snowflakes, my friends. And you need to have something that reads easily for lots of different people. I understand what VR is supposed to look like, or I understand the way VR is supposed to function. You don't have to explain anything to me, But if you have someone that's experiencing what I'm experiencing and they have to go jump through all those hoops, they might be pleased with the picture, and maybe I'm seeing what you're supposed to be able to see, but I don't think so. Like people have been getting real like medical with it, where there's some people who's like, this might be this might be a sign that you have this condition. It's not that it's a bad thing, but like, this is the way your eyes see, that your eyes are confused because you do this thing, and your eyes are just, because I have great vision in the real world. I don't need glasses. Like, I promise. And so that's not the reason. And it's a little frustrating. So it's put me off from it, but I want to give it a go, over the weeks to come and try it again. But in the meantime, I've just noticed that it seems softer to me. I remember the 2016 launch of PSVR being much bigger than this, and it was much bigger than this. And Sony did talk about numbers, and I'd be interested to be able to glean some information about who's playing what. One thing I did notice, and I don't know if you know, we'll talk about Call of the Mountain in a little while, but is the trophy numbers are pretty ominous. I'm getting to just normal parts of the game, and you go and look, and it's like 14% of the people have this trophy. It's like, really? 14% of the people got this far in the game, like halfway through the game. It's been out for weeks. It just doesn't seem like it's sticking. So that's a little ominous, but we'll get to that. Okay. Chris, I do want to ask you about this. Counter-Strike 2 could be announced this month, it's claimed. Video Games Chronicle reports. And they're relaying word from a friend of the show, Richard Lewis, who is a esports and more PC-centric journalist. But he notes that, quote, a new version of Counter-Strike is on the way, and that had been worked on for some time, end quote. He said, quote, the new version is almost certainly set to be released under the working title Counter-Strike 2, and the tentative release date for the beta is in the month of March, with April 1st at the outside, end quote. So Valve has long been known for developing games in secret and releasing them, when they're ready to go, or announcing them when they're ready to go. And people have long wondered and prophesized if they would ever do that with Half-Life 3. In the meantime, you can wait for this with Counter-Strike 2. I'm wondering what you think. Is this, first of all, what do you think about this coming back? This is such a very specific style of shooter that I feel like is really I know people still play a lot of it, but it seems like very much of the PS3 era. And I thought that's especially interesting because I was wondering if you thought it is possible that this would ultimately come to console as well, because Counter-Strike Go did come to PlayStation 3 during that weird era where Valve wanted to work with PlayStation. Like, they put Portal 2 on PlayStation 3, and there was like some, I think, weird move functionality or some shit with it. And so they were friendly with them at that point. And of course, the original Counter-Strike was ported to Xbox. So do you think that this is going to be a PC only thing? Do you think it would fit on console? What do you think about all this as a kind of a shooter fan, a first person and third person shooter fan?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, Counter-Strike is definitely not a console game. It is one of those few. I mean, there are a lot of shooters like that where it's like, this is definitely made for PC and you can feel it. I think Overwatch is partly like that with certain heroes, and obviously Counter-Strike is like that as well. Half-Life is like that too, in my opinion. But I mean, you could play the PS2 version of Half-Life 2, I guess, and disagree. But I think I don't know, man. Counter-Strike is such a weird anomaly to me because it's still so popular. Like, I'm reading the Counter-Strike Global Offensive Steam charts right now. This is a pretty ancient. It's not as ancient as the OG Counter-Strike, of course, but Counter-Strike Go has, like, in the last 30 days, it was like the peak players was 1 million, like over 1 million, like 1,376,000. And that's like people in the last 30 days playing Counter-Strike Go. CSGO, man, it's popular. So like, I almost wonder, like, at least according to Steam charts. And so like, to me, I'm like, what is the benefit of even making another one when you have so many people clearly married and clearly devoted to this game that's been slow, like kind of quietly murdering as far as like people's playtime and like just the amount of people like engaged in it. I do think it's also funny that they chose the one game that they have that can't possibly have a sequel in the threes to make a sequel to. I think that's just so fucking interesting. They really do have an aversion to trilogies. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I don't know. This could be amazing. This could be a big thing for PC for sure. Like, I don't know if it'll translate to console though, because I don't know if you've messed around with Counter-Strike at all, Colin or Dustin.
A long time ago. Yeah.
They are not console friendly shooters at all. And I feel like any effort to kind of make them a little bit more appealing to a console audience, be that with, more controller friendly, settings or, aim assist or anything like that. I feel like that just really runs the risk of kind of fucking it up for itself. So it's in this uncomfortable position where it kind of has to remain as PC focused as possible, but also it has to somehow convince millions of people to kind of switch over to the new thing. And so like, I don't know, whatever if this is real, and I have no reason to doubt it, because this is a pretty respected journalist, and also just tying his name to this and it not being real would be insane. So if this is real and it comes out, it must be something special, or at least something special in the eyes of Valve, which, I mean, they've got a pretty good eye for that. Half-Life Alyx was, I mean, widely regarded as the first real AAA VR title. So like, I am very interested in this. I've never been that big on Counter-Strike. I've always been too bad at it, but I'm very curious about checking this out if it's real at all.
Yeah, I had some Counter-Strike friends in college that would utilize the really wonderful T1 connections we had in the dorms and play, and it wasn't my style of game. That was what I was thinking about, like not really being into the series. My thought about the name Counter-Strike 2 was that they were going to try to make something different, that like Counter-Strike Go is almost like a spin-off that they're going to leave alone, and maybe Counter-Strike 2 would be its own thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
something a little different. But Dustin, you have any thoughts on this before we move on? I'm speaking from a place of ignorance, so I really have nothing substantive to add here.
Yeah, I wonder if this is a response in some way to Valorant really becoming pretty popular. I can't speak to the difference in numbers there, because I was trying to search while Chris was talking, and I'm seeing a lot of mixed reporting about which one is more popular. I think Valorant might have a slight edge on Twitch, but I'm not exactly sure about that. But there's more players right now in this type of game, where it's like this very twitchy, hit scan, super hardcore PC shooter space. So it's cool to see Valve react or do something. I mean, obviously they're doing a lot with Steam Deck, and that's cool, but it's really cool to see them doing something as far as game development is concerned. I wouldn't expect this come to console. Definitely not at launch. Maybe a few years. I was looking at the Counter-Strike Go that came to PS3. They abandoned, and like, I don't know about early on, but I saw a thing that's like, it hasn't been updated in 9 years or something like that. So which I guess it has been a few generations, but it seems like that version didn't necessarily do super well for them. And like Chris said, it made sense. It's not really designed to be a console style shooter. So
well, I remember it being a surprise when it came.
Yeah,
that people were like, "What are you talking about?" But yeah, it was interesting to go back and look at, because I wanted to make sure. I remember people playing Counter-Strike on Xbox, and it was on Xbox, the original Xbox. But I think that was a later version of it. So I don't know. We'll talk a little bit too about how memories are just melding, and I'm totally forgetting about entire games I've played.
It would be interesting if these games came to if Counter-Strike 2 came to PS5 and Xbox, but required a mouse and keyboard.
Yes.
Like because really, like, you just can't do it. You can't play Counter-Strike with a controller. It's just not. You will. I would be staggered if anybody could get a single kill at all, because it is so twitchy. It is so hit scan. It is so precise. It's what I didn't really like about it. It's a game that's more aim than anything. And to me, it's just like, well, I want movement to matter, and I want, like, all different. I want map awareness to matter and all. And it never really clicked with me. But it would be interesting to just be like, if you have a controller, you just can't play this. You have to hook up a mouse and keyboard. I would imagine that would result in a lot of angry refunds. So maybe they don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, you got to have like an icon that people recognize, or make a version where it's just siloed off and you play with controllers.
Yeah, but then it's just going to be a bunch of incompetent psychos running around a map, like, missing each other. It is a very, like, it is such a interesting. I played a little bit of CS:GO, and like I said, I was never particularly good at it, and so I just kind of put it down. But that would be a bold thing to do. Like, maybe the cover art is just like, it's just big words that say you need a keyboard for this.
Yeah. keyboard
Like,
and mouse
don't-
required, and like some sort of box when you sell it, like, do you have a mouse and keyboard? Check this too.
Yeah, something
I
like
expect
that.
it to be free to play. Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think this
Oh, yeah.
PC version will be free.
Yeah,
a million percent. So maybe that'll mitigate the risk of that, actually.
And I actually just think that there's no reason for them to. It's very similar to how I feel about Half-Life Alyx, where it would be awesome to have that on PSVR 2, but they have no reason to do it. And I think this is 10 times even more that, which is Counter-Strike 2 is just a Steam thing. And that's what it is. And I just feel like that works and that makes sense. Even PCs are allowed their exclusives, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you guys about that just based on, I saw a lot of excitement about it, and I was remembering those legacy console versions, and maybe if we were going to see something, but I doubt. I agree with you guys. I doubt that we will. But let's stay in this frame with some shooties. Push Square reports first-person Fortnite could be coming to PS5 and PS4 next season. And they point to, I guess, a well-known leaker in this space and streamer in this space, Hypex, who says Fortnite's first-person mode is finally coming in next season. And he's reliably sourced it as well as some other people in that Fortnite space. I thought this was interesting. I feel like this is kind of... I didn't know like people wanted this, I guess, out of this game. And I didn't know people wanted the no-build stuff either, because I thought that was part of the game. So I wonder if people are just getting so comfortable in the space that they just don't want to leave it, and so they're going to try to retain you in as many ways as possible. But I was wondering, Chris, what do you think about first-person shooter Fortnite?
I think it's cool. I think it's cool. Anytime you're able to transform or give like an alternate mode of play to an existing game that has, obviously a large reach to appeal to more people, I think that's really cool. I thought it was awesome when the first instance that I can remember this happening was with Grand Theft Auto 5, when they added the first-person mode, and I remember thinking that was so cool. Even if those kinds of, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto didn't function as well, but just the ability to do that was really cool, and I think it adds a lot of value. I mean, Fortnite, I only really kind of got into it once they got rid of that stupid building shit, which is like a hallmark of the game, obviously, because I remember playing it. I was like, yeah, this feels good to play until you're fighting somebody who's building a 3-story colonial bathhouse in the middle of a fucking gunfight, and then it just feels schizophrenic.
Right.
And so with that removed, it actually was a lot more, I don't know, it felt a lot more competent as a shooter. It also let you do a lot of like dumb shit. Like I'll never you can down enemies and pick them up and just do whatever you want with them. It's hilarious. You could throw them in a dumpster and like just light it on fire. It's so cruel, the shit that you can do, and it's so funny because it's all these cartoon characters. It's a mess. It's a complete mess. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger throwing Spider-Man into a fucking lake, drowning him. It's so funny. It really is. And I laugh like a lunatic whenever I play. I don't play it that often, but like sometimes I do, and I get a good laugh out of it. And I'll definitely be checking out first person mode because I feel like that might actually be cool. I don't know if it would. I don't know, because I feel like your situational awareness in a game like that is really important, and third person helps that a lot. So I do wonder like how that would function, or whether or not it would be like kind of siloed off into its own like mode where it's like everybody in this mode is first person, or whether it's just like a camera setting that you can toggle. Because the GTA Online, it's just a camera toggle. Like no one's forced into that. But I don't know. We'll see how that goes. If it's real, that sounds kind of cool. Like I like the idea that games are becoming like really flexible.
Yes.
And it's like, hey, I like the overall pacing of like a match of Fortnite, but I also like prefer first person shooters. It'd be cool to be able to have that without compromising the overall design and identity of the game. And if they can get that working, that's dope.
It's a sign of the times to me that the companies are starting to realize we don't need to make more games. We need to change the games where we already have people captive. And Rockstar and Take-Two have done a really nice job with that. Obviously, Epic has done a really, really nice job with that, and some others as well. So we'll see. Dustin, you want to play some first person Fortnite?
I heard they're adding my boy Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan. So
oh my God,
that's the rumor right now. So we'll see. I might be in for that. But I would expect fully that when they do this, that there will be first person lobbies and there will be third person lobbies, just because of the like Chris was saying, the amount of situational awareness that those two different modes or viewpoints are very, very different. That's how it works in Call of Duty, which is really ironic how this is working out. Call of Duty added a third person mode. And so you have those two options, and now Fortnite is adding a first person option. And I wonder if they were somewhat resistant to doing this for a while, because so much of their money comes from selling skins. And when you're in first person mode, you don't see the skin you wear or that you pay for as much. I think you'll still probably end up cutting to third person mode regularly when you play first person mode. Specifically, if you're like gliding or something like that, then you'll hop out of first person temporarily. But
then what this opens the avenue for is now they can. And it's actually interesting. It's just popped into my mind. It's like, now that there's a first person mode, they can justify not only character skins for third person mode for people who are going to be playing that, but now they can justify weapon skins.
I think they already sell those.
Do they actually? I haven't seen a single weapon skin.
They do have some kind of gun skin already.
But now they're probably more likely to be more of a viable thing. Crank them out.
Fortnite has warped capitalism in some sense, which is really funny, where one thing companies are very, very concerned about is how they appear with other companies. And that's the thing that keeps companies from cooperating on film and TV and projects all of the time. The reason that logos are shown and not shown and all the rest, like, they're very, very serious about it. That's why Mad Men was so cool, that companies eventually started, well, basically from the very beginning, were getting involved in the show. So gave it that era of realism, gave them like a grounding in reality and all the rest. And I think that the corruption of, like, there being a product writer that corrupts the very notion that no one gives a shit, that there's just so much money and it's just free money and it's just there. And so people are like, yeah, I'll put. That's why I was saying Master Chief and Aloy or Kratos even being together is a pretty big deal. Nonetheless, these people being killed by some fucking trivial person or whatever. If I played Fortnite, I don't even know what the options are out there. I'd have to really look at what my skin options would be, because
it's probably it's ridiculous.
I'm sure like there's probably something awesome out there for me, but
they're most of them are timed, so like you can miss them.
Oh, I see.
So that's kind of how they get you. It's like, if you want the Casey Anthony skin, you're gonna have to log in on.
I love that.
Yeah. It's gonna get to that point at some point. You're gonna have you're gonna run out of shit.
I want to play as myself, but not a cartoon version of myself, like a hyper realistic version of myself, like the people in New Donk City.
Yeah, Unreal Engine 5, Colin Moriarty in Fortnite.
Right. Be awesome. I'd love that. Let's get involved. Well, I'll definitely license this out. We've already appeared in games. We have our own game series, Twin Breaker.
God, that would be so disappointing for the overwhelming majority. Can you imagine like a new skins announced for Fortnite? It's Colin, Chris, and Dustin from Sacred Symbols. And millions of people asked, what?
People would quit the game. Would be the worst thing that ever happened to the game.
What are you talking about? I love that.
All right. The final thing I want to talk about actually broke around the time we were starting, but I wanted to just call it out there or put it out there. So this way we don't have to record a pickup. Capcom, around the time that we're going to be finished recording, is having an event, and they're going to talk about a certain number of games that we already know about and that I don't want to see anything from anyway, like Resident Evil 4, which is right around the corner, Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, which I'm super stoked about, and they're going to show more from Sunbreak, which is coming to console. So anyway, Insider Gaming, which is Tom Henderson's website, reports two things that are going to happen apparently at this thing, and we'll assume this is true, and maybe if it's not, we'll cut it out, I guess. The first and smaller piece of news is that Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak will be coming to consoles April 28th. So that's one piece of relevant information. So that's sooner. And then the bigger piece of information, though, is that Exoprimal, which is that strange Capcom dinosaur game that's not Dino Crisis.
Yeah.
But it's rather like this cartoonish kind of, I don't know what the hell it is.
Dino Crisis fake out.
What'd you say?
It's a Dino Crisis fake out.
Oh, right. Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly right. Why you would not just make a Dino Crisis game, no one knows. But they made Exoprimal, and apparently it has a release date on PS4 and PS5 of July 14th this summer. I'm definitely going to play that game. And
isn't it multiplayer only?
Is it?
I thought it was. Well, it's very multiplayer focused.
Oh, okay. I assumed it was like a Division style game where I could play it on my own.
I mean, probably, yeah. I would imagine it's something like that.
That was how I have no confirmation of that. I was just assuming that they would let people. The fact that games keep letting people play by themselves indicates to me that that I'm not necessarily an uncommon person.
My Google search says Exoprimal is only playable in multiplayer. We'll see, though. That's just what Google is telling me from digital trends.
This is what I'm afraid of with, although I think they might have said something about this maybe in the past, but I don't know, I'm afraid about this with the Division Heartland, which I think sounds really cool. This idea of a more of like a suburban hit, like go on a mission, come back to your base, go on a mission, come back to your base kind of thing sounds super dope. I just want to play it by myself. And I hope that they let that happen. But the Division 1 and Division 2 are totally playable by yourself, front to back.
Apparently, just so you know, Colin, it's unknown whether there will be AI companions. So there may be hope for you yet.
That's what I was. Game. Yeah, what I was hoping for. I mean, based just on with the limited stuff we've seen of the gameplay, you could tell that it was multiplayer centric. But my hope was that you could just kind of go out by yourself. So if that's not the case, then I'm not going to play Exoprimal. But it'll be coming apparently, according to Tom Henderson's website, July 14th, 2023. Anything to say about these dates or games? I don't think there's anything to really say.
Here's what I'm going to say, Colin. The big thing right now, Resident Evil 4 Remake has a demo coming out today. Come on, guys. You're going to buy it. You're going to play it. It's probably going to be great. Don't just skip the demo. Skip it.
I am so not into demos. It's not even funny. I'm just not. I don't care. I don't want to play games like that. I hated them back in the day too. The only demos I liked were demos where you got your little demo disc during the PS1 era or whatever, because that felt very novel. But when a game would come with a demo, the last demo I remember being excited about, Metal Gear Solid 2. You bought Zone of the Enders on PS2, you got the Metal Gear Solid 2 demo, which was like the tanker.
You shoot around, you shoot the bottles and fuck around for 4 hours in that demo. That's what I did.
Right. You had nothing else, but that was what it was all about.
I love demos.
But I'm okay with a demo if you're really using it to make a purchasing decision. I checked out a PSVR 2 game called Puzzling Places, where you kind of put together all these like little dioramas and stuff like that. It was awesome. And I'm probably going to buy that game because of that demo. VR is kind of hit and miss in some ways. So I'm okay with a demo. But here's the thing. A lot of people, you're just jonesing for a taste of this RE4. Think about how sweet it will be when you just play it on launch day.
Yeah.
Just wait.
I wouldn't play a demo for a game that I know I'm going to buy.
Right.
Especially one that I'm like excited about and like that has like narrative implications and like no. I'll play a multiplayer demo. 1,000,000%.
Sure.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I'm being too I'm overstating the fact too much. I'm being too vociferous. With the hatred of the demo. It's necessary for a lot of people. It's just that I think I'm used to not having access to demos that I would actually use. There are games I encounter, like there are so many games even on PlayStation Network and the PlayStation Store that don't even have videos nonetheless, or they have like screens that are meaningless or whatever. It's like, demos. We're far away from demos.
Dude, some of the screenshots for some of these like big games are like the worst. Like I don't know who's in charge of putting like the screenshots in for like really big marquee, like important games, but like I was scrolling through like some screenshots on the store page for games. And I'm like, I can't believe these are the images that they chose to showcase. It's just like, here's a piece of grass. And it's like, what the fuck am I looking at? This doesn't help me at all.
Yeah, I have no patience for that because like I know how it works and it's not just some randomized thing. So you're choosing to do that.
Yeah.
That's the more frustrating part.
Yeah, it's just incompetence.
Yeah, just not caring. Like the most important part. It's goes back to the whole YouTube video mantra. Like, who cares how good your video is if you don't make a title and thumbnail good enough for people to click on it and watch it? You gotta take care of that last 5%. Or you can be like Sacred Symbols and just name your shit whatever you want. All right, let's get into what we're playing, my friends. We're each playing different things. Chris, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah. So I've gotten my teeth a little bit more sunken into Lightfall. Actually, like there was a bit of a firmware update for PS5 that actually benefited us greatly because I think it added Discord functionality to PlayStation officially.
It did. That's the first item in the news that we'll talk about.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But like this has been super convenient, especially yesterday because it's the first time in probably like 7 years that me and all my friends across all the different platforms that we play on were able to like actually run some really complex Destiny shit and remain in the same voice chat without some really cumbersome, like, oh, I'm on the phone and, like, oh, okay, like you join the app it's a whole mess. So yesterday I was diving into some of the deeper stuff, and I gotta say, man, this is it's a weird expansion because everything is awesome except for the story, and I'm seeing a lot of harsh criticism. As far as I think IGN gave it a 5.
Oh,
and I remember feeling like that doesn't feel right.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel right necessarily. Because it's a really good expansion. The new subclasses are awesome. The new quests are great. The raid is out tomorrow. And now that Discord integration is finally here, I can actually do this thing with some friends of mine who I've been playing Destiny with for many, many years now. And so I'm stoked for that. The raid will be the make or break, I think, because there's, Destiny's weird because there's the main campaign, but then there's open world and there's quests, and then there's other things that kind of tie into the main story after the conclusion. So it's not a traditional story in the typical sense where the end of the campaign happens and that's the end of the story and now you're moving on to the next one. It all kind of feeds into it, and the raid is usually a big story beat, which is wild because it's some of the hardest material to get through. It's some of the most team oriented. It's 6 people. It's really complicated puzzle mechanics, really complicated combat encounters, really specific demands for builds. And there's some, potentially if this raid is a really great one, then it could potentially shift the lens of the entire expansion over from one extreme to the other. Of course, that comes with the risk of it being disappointing, which is, always possible, but I have high hopes. It's still really fun. I'm really enjoying it still. It's a really solid expansion, story notwithstanding. But I also got into Tekken recently because I was over at a friend of mine's apartment. We were just kind of fucking around. We went to IHOP dressed in business attire and pretended to be businessmen and just talk really loudly.
Oh yeah,
about
you talked about doing that with people.
Yeah. I hop in Blazers. Yeah, we go into IHOP dressed in business suits and just pretend to talk about Jane from accounting and how she doesn't deserve the spot she was in, and just all this bullshit, and you just see people kind of looking over, and it's fun. And then after that, we went over to the apartment and we were trying to find a game to play, and I was like, oh yeah, let's play. And he had Tekken, and I forgot how much I loved Tekken. It's been so many years. The last Tekken I really dived into was Tekken 2 on the PS1. So I had no real familiarity with modern Tekken. And I jumped into Tekken 7, which is apparently available through PlayStation Plus, I guess, because I didn't even realize.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But I was playing it and I was looking at all these characters. Oh yeah, Nina's in this. Oh, Law's in this. Oh, Yoshimitsu is in this. Let me see if my muscle memory carries over. And it does. And I was like, oh, yeah. Okay, I think I might have a new occasional obsession now with Tekken, because damn, is it good. Tekken 7 is awesome. And it's really convenient to get into it now because there's a new Tekken on the horizon. And I'm stoked about it now. This is a game that I really didn't give a shit about at all a couple months ago. And now I'm jonesing for it. Stoked. But Tekken 7's awesome. Highly recommend it if you haven't checked it out. It's a great fighting game. Awesome. The amount of combos you can do in this game is ridiculous. It's gross. And there's a new one on the horizon, so get jonesing for that one. But that's really it. That's all I've been running through.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think Tekken 7 was first, I think, given away as a free game, and then it was added as part of the suite of extra, I think, later. Because there's a lot of Bandai Namco stuff on PlayStation Now or PlayStation Plus. I should excise PlayStation Now for my vocabulary. Dustin, let's hear from you about what you're playing.
Yeah. So last night, finished up Hogwarts Legacy. Took me about a little less than 40 hours, and I actually was able to do a good job keeping my clock accurate. So a little less than 40 hours. That obviously isn't everything to do in the game, but it is enough to fully complete and fully complete the main story, a lot of the side stuff, a lot of the collectibles, and finish out the year. And I loved it. I really thought it was great. We're going to do a spoiler cast soon, so I'll talk more about it there. But I don't know if I have anything new to say that I didn't already say about it now that I've completed the game, in that the real charm, the real magic of the game is in the world, of course, and just going and exploring Hogwarts and kind of immersing yourself with all the small details. So if that intrigues you at all, it's definitely still 100% worth playing. I think the weakest element of this game in some way might be the story, but I wouldn't even say the story's bad. It's just by the end, when we got back from Texas, I was starting to feel interested in playing other stuff. It's not because Hogwarts soured on me. I was just kind of felt like I had run its course with it. So I was like, okay, I'm pretty close to beating it. Let's just go ahead and finish this up. Maybe I'll return at a later point in order to play some of the other side stuff, but there's just other stuff that I want to play at this point. So more thoughts on that in the upcoming spoiler cast. I'm also still playing a lot of PSVR 2 games, and the more time that I have with this headset, the more I'm really growing to love it. You kind of start to understand its quirks and how to easily get it on and find the sweet spot and make sure you've got your play space set up accurately. And yeah, I'm really, really enjoying just continually jumping through and playing different games. GT7 continually really, really impressive and really fun, even for someone who doesn't fully understand how to play a lot of these games. It's been awesome. I got to give a shout out to two smaller games that I played since last week. One of them being Res Infinite, which was I believe it's a $10 upgrade if you already have it. There's a really neat mode that you can aim with your eyes using the eye tracking, and it works so shockingly well, and it feels so futuristic. I don't know if it's the best way to play it, but if you have it, you have to check out the eye tracking mode. It just feels so weird and like I was imagining when I was playing it. I was thinking like, man, imagine telling my younger self one day, not only will you have VR that is so shockingly good, but you'll be able to control the game with your eyes. It's super cool. I recommend it. Second thing, something I almost slept on, but I decided to just go for on a whim, and that is Thumper. Now, I played Thumper on the original PSVR, and it was awesome. One of the best experiences on PSVR, and I think it came to other headsets too. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, it's a $5 upgrade. It's probably good, but I feel like I've experienced that game. I don't really need it. And then I just said, fuck it. I'm going to check it out. Dude, the upgrade on this is awesome. It really, really showcases the HDR aspect of the screen. The beetle that's in front of you is like practically glowing, and you really get a nice sense of movement when you're flying through and doing going through the different turns and stuff like that. It really is a trippy game that I wasn't expecting how good the upgrade would be. So if you're sleeping on it because you already played it, this might be one worth going back to and checking out again, because I really, really was shocked. And now I'm probably going to play through the whole game again. So I'm excited. The Dark Pictures Switchback is coming out in a few weeks. So that will probably be one of the next games I get. And I know Jimmy and I are talking about checking out Pavlov this weekend. That's the one on the PSVR subreddit. Seems to have a lot of low-key excitement around it, a lot of fun in the lobbies and stuff like that, which is kind of like a Call of Duty style shooter in VR. So I'm excited to check that out. I'll report back next week about that.
Cool, man. Yeah, I still played a little bit of Horizon Call of the Mountain. It's very charming, and I like it a lot, but that's the only VR game. I'm playing very slowly. I will give it up to it. It's like a pretty it's a pretty physical game, which I like. I can feel it actually when I'm playing it. Just the arm movements and all of the rest, not like killing me, but you can feel it. Probably if I wasn't lifting weights like I have been the last couple of years, I probably would be like crying like a little baby actually.
Dude, the main character, I heard this. I was watching Jake Baldino's video about reviewing PSVR stuff. He pointed out that he sounds like Nick Cage. And now I can't unhear it. I'm like, this is Nick Cage. I am Nick Cage right now in Horizon.
I'll have to keep that in mind. I'm going to play later tonight, so
think about that.
I'll keep that in mind. And then
it may enhance your experience. Honestly.
It probably will. Thank you. And then Wild Arms 2 is the other game I'm playing. I only played for about 10 hours this last week. I've just been busy with other things, but it's funny because I played this game summer of 2000, as I recall, and I felt like I remembered it. And I've so far, like, I remember elements of it now as things happen. I was like, oh yeah, it's about this bounty hunter group and this like weird totalitarian group called Odessa and all this weird stuff. But I'm surprised by how little I remember from it, because I beat it. I played the whole thing. I had the strategy guide. I was sitting there. I just remember very well doing all of that. And I remember certain elements and certain characters. Like there's like a young mage named Tim in the game that I'm really fond of. I love just like young magic users. I find that very mysterious and intriguing. Just the idea of these very young, almost unknowingly powerful children. It's a very intriguing part of, or could be an intriguing part of fiction with these fantasy themes especially. But Wild Arms 2 is just what I'm surprised about again is how many games I've played where I just don't even recall very much about it. And you're there and you're looking at it and you're playing it hour after hour after hour. And I'm like, I do not remember any of this. How do I not remember any of this? And I thought, based on that Mikey Rivers wrote in, and I thought his question was perfect here. He says, what's good, Sacred Gentlemen? Question for y'all. How good is your gaming memory? For me, I have consumed so much content over the years that I can hardly remember any prominent moments in games I have played in the past, unless I have played it more than once or watched 20 reaction videos of it on YouTube. Nier Automata has one of the best, most philosophical stories in gaming. I can't remember fuck all about it. BioShock, I don't know, something about Would You Kindly. What say you, gentlemen? Well, Mikey, I agree. I'm in total agreement. I think this was a game that was a staunch reminder that I actually have more established memories of the moments of playing it, sitting on the specific chair I was sitting on with the strategy guide that I still have, and going through it and getting all the best weapons and all of that. But when I'm looking at the game itself from a beat to beat moment, I'm like, I don't remember any of this, and I don't know how that's possible. And I think it gets to the point where you're consuming so much that it's why I kind of get excited when I haven't seen a TV show for a long time. Like I've been trying to intentionally not watch Seinfeld for the first time in my life, basically, probably over the last few years. And I would watch Seinfeld pretty much every day from the mid 90s all the way through the early to mid 2010s. And I was like, how fun. And it was still funny and I still loved it. And I wondered how would I love it if I just didn't watch it for a while? And I'm trying to do the same thing with The Office and these other very highly watchable things. And so it goes to show you that you can and do, and in fact are consuming too much of this shit, and that memories you have, you can't even locate. At least that's been my experience now. And I found it quite haunting because I know I was there and there's just these really faint, eerie elements of it. And that's it. And nonetheless, I'm enjoying playing it. It's a very straightforward role-playing game. It's definitely not as good as I remember it. I think the original Wild Arms is still a really like stone cold classic, just fucking awesome role-playing game with a really wonderful story and meaningful characters. And I really love it. I think this game leaves a little bit to be desired, and I don't remember feeling that way. But I'll say this, when I was 15 years old or whatever I was when this came out, my level of quality for a Japanese role-playing game was very, very low. I just loved it. I just loved that shit. When a game like Beyond the Beyond came around, or like a really, truly bad game that you just couldn't tolerate, it was so rare that you would often just go. And the reason I bought so many of these games and had so many of these games, these role-playing games from that era, is I just bought them. You sometimes see them in PSM or EGM or whatever, but you just kind of went in. So maybe that also affects me, is that I have a finer palate now as well. And it doesn't quite stand up. All right. Let's get into the news. There are 3 items we have to get through. Chris already gave us a prelude to one of them, so we can get right into this. Number 1, a big new meaty firmware update has been released for PlayStation 5, and you may have already downloaded it and began messing around with it by the time you hear this show. As noted in an extensive post on the official PlayStation blog, firmware 23.01.07, coming in at over a gig, according to our friends at Push Square, adds many a much requested bell and whistle. The big gun here is Discord voice chat, which has been officially enabled on PlayStation 5. Naturally, you'll need to link your PSN name with your Discord account, and there are directions on PlayStation.com to do just that. It's important to note that those of us who already have made this connection between PSN and Discord will need to do it again. So that's important, because like I think I've already connected mine, because you can see what you're playing and all this. Yeah. If you've done that, you got to do it again. Other new social-driven features in the firmware update include the ability to instantly join a friend's game from their profile, directly request a screen share from a friend, and organize your friends by the games they play too. A big feature for yours truly has also been added to the social realm, the ability to manually and directly send image and video assets from PS5 to your app. This was typically done automatically with all in-game related assets that were purged after 14 days. That's no longer the case. A big technical update in the firmware is VRR, or variable refresh rate support, at 1440p resolution. Quality of life updates include the ability to further sort and search through your games library, have console-level presets for multiplayer sessions, and better data and save migration from PS4 to PS5 and between PS5s. You may have also noticed that DualSense was given its own update at the same time, though it's unclear what's been added or fixed. Meanwhile, PlayStation 4 also received a new firmware update, this one called 10.5. This minor update brings minor fixes. All right, so Chris, what's been your experience or so far with this, or have you messed around with it much?
Yeah, so I mean, I've messed around with it a little bit. I have noticed that because it was always weird to us that Discord integration came to Xbox first, despite the fact that Sony's actually like invested in them. We always thought that was weird, and I still think the linking to Discord voice channels on PlayStation 5 specifically is a little bit less elegant than it is over on Series X. It's a little bit more, because you have to like open up the app on your phone and then kind of join from it'll give you the option to join from PS5. Whereas on the Xbox, it's kind of just like on the dashboard. It's like you don't really need to do anything like that. So I do wish it was a little bit more seamless, but the fact that it's possible at all is, again, like this is a massive, in my opinion, this is like a massive deal. Like for me and like for friends of mine, and just knowing that we can all finally play these cross-platform games without there being some massive annoying caveat of, oh yeah, we're here and we can't talk to each other, but like we're still playing the game together, and like it's like 3 friends are in one console, 2 friends are in another one, and it's just awkward and dumb. Or like maybe we have to use game chat, but then like on PC, game chat's kind of fucky, so it doesn't really work, and then one person's left out. This is a massive deal for me because I can finally get my friends together and actually play the games that we play, like Destiny and any other multi-platform stuff. And it's cool. Like this is fine. This is just like there's no barrier at all now, outside of just the obvious ones, which is like exclusive games or whatever. But we're finally in this true cross-platform era, I think, now that Discord is just natively available on every single platform except for Switch, because who cares? But
yeah, I was gonna say the whole phone thing reminds me of how Switch didn't you have to have like a phone and use a phone?
Yeah.
Use voice chat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you had to use it from the app on your phone, and that was that was their voice chat solution.
So
Jesus
weird.
Christ.
Dustin, my friend, what do you think?
Yeah, a lot of good stuff here. Particularly, I know that the 1440p monitor users really wanted that VRR support because they have the hardware to do it, but the console system wouldn't let them. So giving them that option is great. Let me tell you, not having to plug in the DualSense to update it, love that.
Yeah.
As someone who's chronically lazy, I skip those updates for sometimes weeks at a time just because it's working just fine. I don't what does this update really do? And then eventually I would do it. So doing that over the air is nice. And then shout out, of course, I know this is not totally new, but the ability to have screenshots and then send them to your phone for easy posting. I know that you can post directly to Twitter or whatever directly from the console, but then you have to type it out.
It's annoying.
It sucks. And let me tell you, Nintendo's solution for this is so fucking stupid, and it just makes me think about the difference for Switch. I know some of you have done this. If you want to share a screenshot and you want to just get it over to your phone and you don't want to post directly, you have to scan a QR code on your Switch, and it creates its own Wi-Fi network that your phone connects to. So then you can go in the web browser and download the image.
That
and
is
you have to
insane.
Dude, it's so stupid.
That is actually psychotic.
Yes. Yeah.
Who the fuck thought of that?
Dude, I don't.
That sounds harder to do than, like, not even just like from the user perspective. That sounds harder to program from a back end perspective than just the better way.
Right. Well, I think that it eliminates them from needing back-end servers to hold all these images and videos, just because it's going directly from your Switch to your phone. So Sony's willing to, and Xbox, I believe, has a similar way of doing it, but I love that feature because I just don't want to type it on my console. Everyone wants to do it from their phone, or they just want to send it in iMessage or something like that. So yeah, I like to see that compatibility for sure.
It's cool to finally see some parity developing in functionality between the consoles and between PC, but Sony has such a far way to go, I think, to bring a true. I think they can make PlayStation Network with just a few more bells and whistles into something like a place you go or are. Let's say a place you are.
Right.
Because I don't think I don't feel like you ever are on PlayStation Network. What is it that's about? I'm so impressed with Steam. I'm so impressed when I use it and when I mess around with it. I'm in Steam pretty often, particularly looking at game objects, because every game goes into its own forum. Every game goes into its own game help shit and all this. It's like, it's dope. And so you can find I'm playing Grim Guardians right now, which was recently renamed. I don't know if you saw that,
Yeah.
Gal Guardians, because the NT Creates got a notice that there was a game called Grimguard, and I actually went and looked it up, and yeah, there it was. It's a game out of New Zealand called Grimguard, and it does indeed have a trademark here in the United States. So I don't know how the fuck why they didn't look up that. No one did their due diligence there, but they have to go and rename this game. But I'm playing it, and PSN Profiles is not very useful for it. The really useful spot for this game in terms of understanding anything, including a shit ton of stuff in Japanese, which you can then natively translate inside Steam, is the Steam forum. Fucking all these documents, all these maps. Imagine having that for all of these games on PlayStation. Imagine having a forum on PlayStation. I would love to see that level of deep diving. It would be good for every game. And you can even let people, and I'm sure a lot of publishers would be very eager to, in fact, moderate these communities, spotlight good users and spotlight good reviews and all these different things. They have a long way to go. But it's cool that they're developing some parity. Dustin, please.
Colin, I saw maybe you saw this in the write-up, or I don't even know if it was in the write-up. It's a really interesting thing that I didn't even know, that there was something about now that if let's say you have a disc version of a game or something, and you had the digital license, those weren't compatible or something like that.
Yes.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Apparently, though, that's now more, I don't know, there's some kind of parity where if you have one or the other, it will play just fine.
Right. Yeah, that's
or I guess it would be if you have the disc and then you buy the digital version later, that it will just unlock. You don't need to re-download it.
Right. I think that if you have the disc, then it'll unlock the digital version seamlessly, is how I read it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to think what the scenario would be like if you borrow a game from a friend. Like, let's say you borrow GT7, you play it and you like it. You give your friend the disc back, and then you decide to buy the digital version. You would have to, the old ways, you'd have to re-download it. You can't just like use the key from buying it to unlock it. It had to be a separate thing. But now, if you go and buy the digital version and you have it installed, it will just work the way you would expect it to. I didn't even know that was a thing. I've never been in that situation. But
me neither. Yeah. Shout out to Sony for that. Okay, cool. Big firmware update. No people are excited. We'll see what functionality comes to PlayStation Network as we move forward. But I would just love to see more love given to individual games. Let's really start to bust out and really start to like get going with these different, like, give a game a lot of panache. When you go to a game, every game, when you go to a game, it tells you everything and it keeps you there and it fulfills whatever intrigue or obligation you feel like it needs. And it requires a lot of input from developers and publishers because they're going to have to manage that on their end, but they just don't seem to mind that on Steam. So why would they mind that on PlayStation Network? No one is complaining that I don't want my Steam game to have a fucking forum. Like, who says that? I don't want my Steam game to have game help. It just seems like an obvious thing. Let's make it happen. That'd be sweet. I'd probably spend more money too. And I bet you a lot of people spend a lot more money because of that stuff on Steam. Chris, I put this next one in there for you. And otherwise this would have been something we would have just talked about briefly, but I'll give a little background here instead. Something very exciting has happened for the Chris Ray Guns of the world. The new Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi, right? That's how you say it, right? Has been revealed. I don't think I've ever said it aloud. Word comes by way of DBZ's official website. which relays the news from an event held here in the United States called Dragon Ball Games Battle Hour, known by the name Dragon Ball Z Sparking with an exclamation point in Japan. The original Budokai Tenkaichi came to PlayStation 2 in 2005, and it's a fighting game similar to the standard Dragon Ball Z Budokai franchise that began on PlayStation 2 in 2002. While Budokai was handled by Japanese developer Dimps, still well known for its work in the wider Dragon Ball franchise with games like Xenoverse and The Breakers, and while Budokai hasn't seen a new mainline release since 2004, Budokai Tenkaichi was handled by now closed Team Spike, which merged with Chunsoft in 2012, thus becoming Spike Chunsoft. Budokai Tenkaichi last saw a numbered release with 2007's third game, which came to both PS2 and Wii, and there were a number of spin-offs in the PlayStation 3 generation as well. However, this game, otherwise completely unknown, will be the first new game in either franchise in well over a decade. Liam Venencia wrote into us, as many people did, Chris, and said, "Hello, gentlemen. This one is mainly for Chris. What are your thoughts on Budokai Tenkaichi 4 being announced? After my initial shock and excitement, I was immediately brought back down to earth by all the ways the game could be tarnished with modern gaming practices, specifically loot boxes in the guise of capsules, premium currency for alternate costumes, and tons of DLC for additional characters. Am I alone in my skepticism?" What do you think, my friend?
Well, I'll say this right off the bat, like this, I did not expect this to happen. Budokai is Dragon Ball Z Budokai might be my favorite fighting game ever. I think Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is like a masterpiece, and obviously I love Tekken 2, and there's many other fighting games that I regard technically highly, or maybe even technically higher, or put them on a higher pedestal. But those original run of Budokai games are my favorite. Like, I love those games to death. Budokai 3 is fucking wonderful, and the Tenkaichi games were awesome. Like, that was like so Tenkaichi was a 3D fighter. It was like a little bit more. Budokai was like more 2D. You had like some obviously like, you know, strafe forward and backward into the foreground, but it was still on a 2D plane. Budokai Tenkaichi was all 3D, so you could fly, you could do all sorts of crazy shit. It was awesome, and you know, and then they just sort of stopped at the PS2, and you know, the 360 came out, and we just kind of assumed that we would get more of them. And then they never really came. We got things like Burst Limit and like Raging Blast, which were like, they tried, but like there was something off about them. I think the developers are different. It was a whole different situation, and it never felt quite right. And then over the years, we got like, you know, Xenoverse, which is, you know, these very, very different styles of Dragon Ball games. And I've been missing Budokai for a very, very long time, and I always was curious why they stopped out of nowhere, because I feel like they had such a good thing going. Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is widely regarded as pretty fucking amazing, especially in the Dragon Ball you know, audience. And so seeing this come out of nowhere, that there's going to be a new Tenkaichi, is exciting, to the point where I find it really difficult to even fall into any amount of cynicism about it. Like, it's just, there's no reason for this to exist at all, really. Like, the last one was on PlayStation 2 and Wii. This is ages ago. And so the fact that we're getting another one, and the fact that it looks so nice, even though we've only seen like a very, very brief snippet of footage, and, you know, like, dude, they could, I'm probably the problem here, but I'll buy the shit out of this.
I just don't understand what's going on with Dragon Ball anymore. Like, I don't understand what everything's. I'm so lost on the status of it. There's all these new things, and
oh, dude, I mean, like, there's so many. Dude, even in the last like couple years, we had like Kakarot and Dragon Ball Fighters, and I mean, it's still a very big thing. Dragon Ball Super's very popular too, and I don't know, man. This is, I was not expecting this to happen ever in my life. And like, dude, my friends, my friend from New York called me. He's like, dude, did you see? And I was like, what are you talking about? It's like, there's a new Budokai. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's no way. Like, I was like, there's no, that you're lying. You either like fell for something. This reminds me when Sweeney, when Sweeney called me like years ago. It was like, did you see the Last of Us movie trailer? And I was like, what are you talking about? It's not real. You made that up. And he's like, no, I saw it. And he's like, you gaslit yourself. You hallucinated. That's what I was sure what was happening with here. And then it's real. And I don't know. This is one of those rare instances where like something from my childhood comes back, and I'm just like really, really, I find it hard to just fall into any cynicism about it. I'm sure there's going to be some ways that they're going to like fuck it up. I'm sure there might be some microtransactions or whatever, but like, the fact that this is real at all and that I'll be able to play it again with like friends of mine and just have that experience again is way, way, way more precious and way more exciting to me than any way that they could fuck it up. Like, it's too cool that this is happening.
Yeah, well said. I'm glad people are excited about it. It seemed to get a lot of notice on social media. I saw people really going crazy about it. Are you into this at all, Dustin?
I really liked Budokai 1 and 2, the non 3D ones that Chris talked about, but I kind of fell off after that. Mm-hmm. I just hope, Chris, for you that this, I was trying to find if this was going to be made by the same team that made, there's like a similar 3D fighting JoJo game called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Eyes of Heaven. And it's it's so bad. So hopefully, I think that's also Bandai Namco. So hopefully it's a different team than that. But since the original dev isn't really around at least in that capacity to do that again. But yeah, this is cool. I'm glad to see Dragon Ball still kicking around. I know that Super is a bit mixed for people, but I love seeing these like Hallmark IPs stick around and still be loved, because Dragon Ball was essential for me getting into anime in 2001. I remember seeing it on Toonami, maybe even earlier than 2001. It might have been like 1999, 2000, because I was in kindergarten and first grade, and just being like, what is this? This is so different than anything anything else on TV. I love it. It's so cool. And so to see it stick around, pretty cool. Shout out an OG with Dragon Ball.
It's Tenkaichi was cool because the roster was absurd. Like, you had every character, like even just random Frieza soldiers who meant nothing.
Dude, you gotta play as Mr. Satan.
You could, you could play as Hercule.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm watching a gameplay. I remember playing as him in I think Budokai 2.
Budokai 2, yeah, he was in Budokai 2. But I have a great amount of love for that franchise. And let me tell you something. I know I'm the problem when it comes to this stuff, because, and I shit you not, if this is literally the same fucking game again, literally exactly, paying $100 for it, 100%,
special 100%. Edition.
Yeah, I don't give a shit about it. If it's the same exact thing, they just threw in like 3 new characters, I'm buying it. I know I'm the problem here, by the way. You don't have to write in and be like, you're destroying the industry.
There's a Nintendo fan in the room, Chris. You don't need to defend yourself.
Much props to Budokai.
We're all the problem in some way. But there are games I would jump all over too. So I'm happy for you. I'm happy for those out there that are going to enjoy this. We don't really know any details. I don't even think we have a developer.
No. It's well, I don't know. There might be a developer. It's this is very early. For sure. Like, whatever the fuck this is, I wouldn't expect this for another maybe like 2 years, maybe they'll get it out in a year. I don't know, but I want them to take their time with it. I want them to, do it well, because I want that experience again. Budokai is dope.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not CyberConnect 2. Though they made I think they made Kakarot, and people like that.
Kakarot's not bad, but it's no, they really gotta.
The name suggests it could be Spike Chunsoft, so we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Number 3. A report from an unusual source indicates that LEGO video games may be continuing to take a step backwards as far as release cadence is concerned, both surprising and unsurprising, considering LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga's commercial success, depending on how you look at it. The source for the story is Nintendo Life, a well-respected website that nonetheless never breaks news, so let's take it with a grain of salt for now. Sources speaking to the website note that TT Games, the WB-owned holding company that handles LEGO video games, has canceled multiple upcoming unannounced projects. The biggest of the bunch is a game known as Project Marley, which was some sort of ambitious Disney crossover LEGO game that played off of properties like Pirates of the Caribbean, The Muppets, Frozen, Toy Story, The Jungle Book, Winnie the Pooh, and Nightmare Before Christmas. The website describes the game as having, quote, the player exploring a large overworld and Diablo-like dungeons. The player's overarching goal was to rid each world of an evil purple force corrupting the environment, end quote. Apparently, the recent success of Disney's Dreamlight Valley, available on both PS4 and PS5 and set up with a similar structure to this game, quote, proved to be the final nail in the coffin, end quote, after a protracted 4-year development cycle. Other projects reported by Nintendo Life include Project Cosmic, a LEGO Marvel project that was focused on Guardians of the Galaxy, Project Rainbow Road, a WB crossover shooter that was apparently at first a Funko-themed game that would somehow incorporate the likes of Looney Tunes, Stranger Things, DC Comics, and Rick and Morty, And sadly for fans of Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga, its Mandalorian DLC may never come to fruition, though that remains to be seen. TT Games, of course, stands for Traveler's Tales, and this is the studio that makes the most of the iconic Lego games, with Skywalker Saga being its most recent. Founded in 1989, the studio's first Lego game, a Star Wars title on PS2 and elsewhere, launched in 2005, and they've been known for virtually nothing else since. Dustin, what do you think about this? The cancellation of a few Lego games, including one with 4 years of development, which is a lot of wasted time and money. I mean, you don't make something that long if you don't intend on releasing it. So something went wrong there. Pretty deep into it, but it sounds like though Lego Star Wars did really well, and it did. Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga did very well indeed. It seems like they're kind of nipping and tucking elsewhere and getting rid of some of these projects, and I think that's smart. I think people have only so much attention, especially for these kinds of games. I just don't think it's the same anymore.
Yeah. Well, what's weird to me about TT Games is this was a team like cranking out games left and right, like practically yearly, maybe even sometimes more than that with some of these games that they were doing in different IPs.
Yeah.
And then that kind of grinded to a halt with Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga. And so now to hear that there's all these other canceled projects, it's kind of makes me curious about what's going on behind the scenes there, where you go from such an extreme pace to a very, very slow pace, along with a lot of canceled projects. Let me tell you, I'm not a big Disney guy, despite my Kingdom Hearts fandom. I would love to play this Disney crossover game. Specifically, they mentioned Muppets in there, and it be having Diablo-style dungeons. Just imagining playing as like Kermit with a sword or something like that, alongside, Slinky Dog from Toy Story. This sounds up my alley, and as far as it's in terms of its absurdism. So it's unfortunate that's not happening. It mentions in your write-up about the Disney Dreamlight Valley game being part of the decision. I'm guessing that probably is true if they already have one successful crossover game, but it sounds like this would have been a very different style of game as far as gameplay. But it sounds like there's a lot of trouble elsewhere with this team in that, I don't know, what was the feedback as far as sales on Skywalker Saga? Because I know that a lot of people, it didn't quite live up to expectations, but I'm kind of seemed like it tapered off in sales much quicker than expected. Yeah, at least from our Sales Saga stuff.
Yeah, 3.2 million in 2 weeks, which is pretty good, but not great. And then it lingered on the MPD. I'm trying to find if there's any. Yeah, sales 3.2. The game has achieved more than 5 million copies sold since June 2022. So below 10 million at this point, but that's a nice. I don't know that. I mean, that's not great for a licensed product that took a really long time. I just think that you need to make more money when you have that many games in development. And I just, I guess I didn't realize that they had so many projects in development. I didn't even know TT Games was really this big. Although it's important to remember that TT Games is kind of the overarching body over a lot of these different smaller teams. So, Chris, I wanted to ask you though, and you can talk about whatever you like, but I specifically wanted to talk to you about the WB crossover shooter that was at first Funko themed and would have Looney Tunes, Stranger Things, DC Comics, and Rick and Morty. Why do people want to just force metaverses into existence? These things don't belong together.
That's WB. But Chris, sorry.
No, you're right. Like Space Jam and just, I can't stress this enough. The Clockwork Orange rapists have courtside seats to the Looney Tunes basketball game in Space Jam 2. I cannot even, like, that's real. Like it's just a real thing. I think crossover culture is too much. It's too much. It's insane. Like, people talk about cancel culture like it's a problem. No. This is where the problem really is, where you have like SpongeBob and Oppenheimer in like a fucking 3D shooter. Like, it's just like, it's wrong. It's just like these things shouldn't be. And it's like, I understand, like it was, there used to be like a real novelty to crossovers in this way. Like, obviously, like Smash Brothers was the first big one, and it's like, oh, how cool! Like, it's it's Pikachu and Mario and all these Nintendo properties, and it's like there was some, even though there were Nintendo properties, and it was weird seeing Pikachu being as tall as Mario, it was still at the very least, it was like, all right, well, there's some theme here. And even just things like I remember from when I was a kid, like stuff on television, you would have like cartoon crossovers every now and again, and it would be like a big deal because they happen so infrequently.
Chris, do you remember there was one that I think was like an anti-drug thing?
Oh yeah, the PSAs.
I looked it up. It's called Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue. This shit got Garfield, got Alvin and the Chipmunks, Winnie the Pooh. It's got Muppets in it, Smurfs.
Yeah.
It's like children's farm aid.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even outside of like PSAs, which are universally tacky and kind of cringe, but like we had like, I don't know, Jimmy Neutron and Fairly Odd Parents would have like a special crossover episode, or there would be like, but it would be so infrequent that it was special. Now it's everything. Everything is this. Oh, like Tobey Maguire's back in the new Spider-Man movie, and it's like, cool, but why? Like, oh, Michael Keaton's Batman is in the new Flash movie. What are you doing? Why? It's just so it's so tiring, and that, what is it, the three character crossover fighter Smash Brothers clones that we had, what was Multiverses or whatever, where you had Arya Stark fighting
Tom and Jerry.
I don't even fucking know. Like, yeah, Tom and Jerry, and it's just, it's become very uncanny. And I think the first time I really noticed that it felt off, the first time and this is a while ago, was PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, where I saw like the Big Daddy from BioShock and Sir Daniel Fortescue and Nathan Drake next to each other. I just remember feeling like, that's unholy. First of all, the Big Daddy shouldn't even be here. This is not like a PlayStation character at all. So this is just bizarre to see in the first place. But the fact that was real at all felt like really just off-putting to me. And that was a sign. Little did we know that was a sign of things to come. They're actually really ahead of the time, if you think about it, as far as like these nonsensical crossovers go. But I don't know, man.
They have so many. I was just looking. Let's lay some of this out. So we'll count the Lego movie is a WB crossover movie because they pull from all their different IPs.
That's true.
Space Jam,
one, to be fair.
Space Jam: A New Legacy is a crossover movie with WB stuff. Ready Player One is full of WB crossover stuff. Multiverses, another thing where they're trying to take advantage of their IP. And I get it. Like, it would make sense. You have a lot of like legendary IP. You should use that to some advantage. But it's like, damn, like, do we really need, like you're saying, Chris, everything doesn't need to have everything in it.
Scooby-Doo just beating the fucking life out of Gandalf, right? Like, just mercilessly bashing his face in.
I just don't know where you go from. It's like you have a Smash Brothers game where you're picking characters, and imagine being in the other room and hearing in the character select screen like Leslie Nielsen, the Prophet Muhammad. like what do you like? What is going on? Like we need.
They got to get police force involved in this. What do you say? Who owns police force anyway? We got to get that.
I just feel like
police academy. I think
police.
No. What was the Tales from the Police Force or whatever? That was like the thing. Leslie.
Police Squad.
Police Squad. That's what it was. Police Squad. Yeah. Sorry.
But I just feel like it, and I really need people to take the context of how I'm saying this into account when I'm saying it. We need to maybe bring segregation back as far as IP. Like, we don't need Tom and Jerry to be, fighting with Anne Frank on the Eiffel Tower. We don't need these things happening. Like, we just need, like, let's have our own separate. It's part of why I actually like what DC is doing lately, where they have like, Joker as its own kind of thing, and like the Batman is its own thing, and it's not like, I like that stuff. It's cool. But of course, you're gonna have like Joaquin Phoenix and Robert Pattinson. I don't even know, make a sex tape with Elmer Fudd or something. I don't know. I'm tired. I'm tired.
Lockmore, enjoy that one.
That'd be fucking hot to see.
Yeah, enjoy that one, Lockmore. I gave that one to you.
Yeah. All of the crossovers made me feel like there's just the real world and then there's one fake world. because instead of like having an infinite number of fake worlds that you live in, it's like, okay, so we live in the real world, and then since everything takes place in each other's worlds now, we just have a fake world, and that's where we go for all of the things now. And it's a little strange. I just hope that these things aren't continued to be forced as well. I agree in leveraging your stuff. And by the way, we can't discount the mega influence that two companies had on crossovers, which are Marvel long before MCU, and of course Capcom. And games like Street Fighter versus X-Men and Marvel versus Capcom and all of the rest. I mean, these are
100%.
These are major examples of mega successful crossovers. And I feel like fighting games are actually such a natural place for them that's one of the spaces where it should kind of be limited. Like where the absurdity of it, I kind of embrace. Like we are talking about Tom and Jerry fighting fucking, whoever, Daffy Duck, but it is funny, I guess. It's fun, and it, in a comical like setting, it's funny. But in anything else, it's kind of stupid. Like I'm seeing Space Jam. Why am I seeing people wanting to have sex with that female rabbit from Space Jam all the time? I'm just seeing it all the time. Like people are constantly talking about how much they love it.
Not the new one, it's the old one. That's the controversy.
Right, because he's
not hot anymore.
Right, they didn't make her hot, and then this really disturbed people that they didn't make her hot anymore or whatever.
Dude, isn't that always the thing though? Is that now there's the same conversation with the new TMNT?
Oh yeah, because April O'Neil isn't hot anymore. Like whatever.
Yeah.
I actually thought the style of that new. I don't know if you guys saw that trailer for the new TMNT. I actually thought the style of it looked awesome.
I did too. Actually, I thought it looked fine. But also, like, what does the hot girl want to do with turtles in a fucking sewer? I mean, let's be realistic. April O'Neil's going to be in the fucking sewer. Yeah.
April O'Neil's not going to be fucking. She's not going to be within 50 feet of those goddamn things. Are you joking?
So, it might be a little, might be a little more realistic to have like the, not the hot, like anchor.
Just a normal ass person.
Yeah.
Actually,
like a schlub like me.
Yeah,
I would be down with turtles. I'd be like, okay, that's fine.
I did see a really funny image macro of all the all the gingers who have been replaced in media, and I thought that was like really funny.
That's awesome.
But I like that they're teenagers, like they're actual teenagers in this new one or whatever. Like they actually like talk like teenagers and they sound like teenagers. Like, oh, it's weird that I haven't seen that before. Right. From a franchise called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
They're like grown, and especially in the 1990 movie, which I fucking love that movie. I absolutely love. That's one of my favorite movies, straight up.
Do you like that scene where one of the turtles yells and you could see the guy's face hauntingly screaming underneath the?
I don't think I even noticed.
Let me find that. Let me find that and send it to you. It's good.
I have very nostalgic memories. I think Casey Jones in that rendition is just so fucking cool. I wanted to be Casey Jones so bad when I was a kid. But they're like grown ass men with like jaded philosophies on life in this. In that version, they're not like we see through those weird cuts. Remember that there's like those weird like cut scenes, for lack of a better term, when they're showing them as little mice. I think that might even be from the second one, right? Where they show them in the ooze and then they show them growing up and doing a little combat as little turtles. They like just show you a little background of it.
Yeah, little ooze.
But I think that might be from the second one. Anyway, should we move on?
Yeah,
let's do it.
Okay. And by the way, I'm curious to see what happens with this. The Guardians of the Galaxy cancellation or something to do with that. I think maybe people are a little, you don't want to go too crazy with Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't think Looney Tunes, I think Stranger Things has kind of lost a little bit of its panache, in my opinion, as well. I just finished the third season. That was pretty bad. I gotta be honest.
Third season's so much better.
Third season's bad. Yeah. It's second season I thought wasn't that great. I think the first and fourth season are actually the strongest seasons.
The first season's awesome. The second season's good. The disappointing thing about the third season was just they had all of the trappings of something awesome, like just that mall setting alone. I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is Stranger Things with money and attention and all that. But it was horrible. It's just I didn't even want to fit that last like movie length episode. I'm like, God almighty, just fucking stop. But I heard the fourth season's pretty good. So, and
I think it's the best season. Oh, personally, the fourth one.
Interesting.
Yeah, I like it the most.
Oh, that's very tantalizing because I'm looking for something to watch right now.
Let me send you a little. All right, send you a little image.
I'm opening this here. Let me bring this over.
Oh no.
I never know. That's so horrifying.
So if you don't, there's a Reddit post called "The Frame in Ninja Turtles" where you can see the actor's mouth, and
It's overlaid. There's if you're on the video version, you're seeing it.
Yeah. But like, if you're on the audio, I'm just saying, like,
and the eyes.
It's damn funny. It's one of the funniest images I've ever seen. Oh fuck! Sorry, guys. I had to share that.
That's so fucking horrible. I gotta get it. That shit's unholy. It's unholy. Oh. Okay. All right. Let's get into 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience. We end each and every episode of Sacred Symbol. I want to like hear it because I can hear that. You know, I like to see this.
Oh, man.
Anyway, we end all the episodes with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from Patreon. Patreon.com/laststandmedia. Please come join us there for early ad-free access to Sacred Symbols Plus twice a week. Submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, monthly Q&As, and all the rest. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much for that. Tim Copeland writes in first and says, "Hey, Colin and the cuties. I recently finished the Mass Effect trilogy again via the Legendary Edition. While the series has its faults, I really enjoyed that my major decisions carried over and even minor ones they made in the first game would matter in the third. Do you think we'll ever get another trilogy of games from any studio that would try to match this style of choices mattering over a trilogy or series? Or is that unfeasible with the amount of work and length of game development? Thanks, y'all. And FemShep is the best Shep." I totally disagree. I never played as FemShep. I always played as just the standard male, shaved head shepherd.
Yeah.
I just liked him. He was fine. And then when you play as him as like the renegade and you just punch that female reporter in the face, still one of the funniest.
I've had enough
ever.
of you and your disingenuous assertions.
Oh my God, that's
insane.
By the way, I'm like still crying from that.
No, it's hard to shake off. But as far as like, do you think we'll ever get another? I don't think the reason why this doesn't happen more is because it's just very, very difficult to do. I think that's ultimately the reason, because you have to. I feel like lately, especially, like there have been some exceptions. I think FromSoft is great at this, and just generally, like you might have some here and there, but like a lot of games don't want to pump a lot of money into stuff that the audience might never see. And Mass Effect is full of that. Mm-hmm. It's in the second game. I mean, like that ending completely redirects the trajectory of the third one based on what you do in it. Entirely. Like it all ends kind of similarly, obviously, and that's like one of the biggest complaints about Mass Effect. And I think that's also probably one of the reasons why you'll never see this happen again. Is just to avoid that kind of snafu in the first place. But it's difficult to do. It's difficult to organize. It's a lot of resources going into making sure everything narratively works, regardless of how many choices you make across many titles. It's really special. And it's one of the coolest experiences in video games for sure. Like going through the original Mass Effect trilogy and watching your choices actually play out from game to game. It's really cool. But it's really cool because it's special, and it's special because it's hard. And I don't know. I don't know many developers who would even be ballsy enough to even attempt it. I don't even think BioWare would attempt that again. So,
well, they got really beat up the last time they did it. And that, I think that's a big part of it is, and I'll be curious to hear what you think too, Dustin, is that, first of all, I think making games like that is presumptive. I think that's or presumptuous. You should say number one, because you're assuming that you'll even get, that you're good enough, that you'll get noticed. I just think that's a lot of bravado to say like, oh, you're going to have more. This is just the beginning. BioWare kind of got away with that, and I think started the hype, but I think a lot working that out and gaming that out, I think a lot of publishers and developers over time realized that it's not really possible. And think about how many of those would have been just aborted over time, and just a lot of them. So you don't want to go down and open that up. But I also think that Mass Effect 3, the reception, like even though people liked Mass Effect 3, and I think Mass Effect 3 is awesome personally, but a lot of people didn't like Mass Effect 3, and I think that scared a lot of potential suitors off as well. Because I think Mass Effect 3 was lambasted for no real reason by people that didn't really understand the intent. I don't think they understood, and I've said this so many times over the years, but Mass Effect is shaped like a diamond. And I think people thought it was shaped like a sideways triangle where it was going to go on forever in this like incredible butterfly effect. But I'm like, no, eventually they have to close it. So you're all going to come to probably the same conclusion in different ways. That always seemed obvious to me. And when that came to be, and that there weren't real, like where there were real differences, like where people didn't feel like they had real agency over the things that were happening, especially, I was like, I don't know what you really expected. You almost expected too much. And I think I think others looked at BioWare and said, well, if they couldn't do it and make everyone happy, why the hell would we even bother? And that's like 10 years of your life. You know, at this point, that would be like 15 years of your life doing a series like that. So, yeah. So I think there's a lot to it. Yeah, go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, I agree with you guys overall. It's just that with Mass Effect, like you said, the backlash, and I think that in some ways, I don't want to say it was their fault, but I think that it kind of had this expectation of all these different endings, and but I think that you're right, and that it makes sense that it's like how many endings could they truly do? I think some of it had to do with how the end was presented, like what was it, like the red, blue, green or whatever,
right?
And no spoilers, but I think that the way it was kind of cut and dry at the end, I think negatively impacted it. But I think it's important to remember too. Or I think it's important for people to remember that a story or a game or a movie or whatever, I understand that it's very, very important to nail the ending. But sometimes if the journey is good, then that's good too. And that's the thing with Mass Effect, is that I think the ending is fine. I think it's disappointing in some ways. It's not as bad as people made it to be, but it's okay because the journey to get there was so fucking awesome that I'm all right with it, that the ending was maybe a little bit on the weaker side. So as far as the actual question is what Tim's saying, will they do it again? I don't think so. I think that, like Chris said, it's probably really, really hard. And you're just setting up people to have unrealistic expectations. And I think we talked about this on the Mass Effect spoiler cast that comes out tomorrow, but or maybe it was a few weeks ago.
You mean Dead Space?
Or the Dead Space. Oh yeah, the Dead Space spoiler cast. That I just always think I prefer a linear story that you may have some options in, and that just ends one way, is always going to be my preference. I think it's a better way to tell a story overall. Of course, there's going to some variations. It's cool. I like some player choice, but
sure,
I prefer that this is the current trajectory that we're on in this style of storytelling.
I'll say I'll give a shout out to the only other series that I really think does it over 3 games, which is Banner Saga. And Mike actually I bought her Banner Saga on Switch like a couple of years ago, and she finally got through playing it. We just have like all these games. You just kind of get to them when I feel like that way about Octopath Traveler 2 right now. Like I really want to play it, but I'm like, it's going to be great whenever I get to it. I'm not in any rush. But she played through it and she was lamenting some of her choices and then that she was locked in. But Chris, you said something that was poignant too that I want to round out with, which is the idea that you're putting Mass Effect was an unnecessarily expensive game because for the time, because they had to do a lot of things twice. You don't have to do the core game or gameplay or setting or anything twice, but all the different decisions and circumstances of your existence in the world are going to be different depending on the choices you make. And that's difficult enough to do in one game. And then you have to kind of stretch that between multiple projects. And what we found out, and I think, I don't know who it was from BioWare, it's an ex-person, it might have been like Mac Walters or something, saying that they had telemetry saying it was something like 10-1, something like literally that few people. And that was Paragon to Renegade. Like true Renegade playthroughs, especially in the later games, was a total minority, like small group. And they had to continue to invest in that because they had to continue to keep this going, even though they knew that people didn't really care. And that was kind of the weird dichotomy of Mass Effect, is how successful it was in doing what it did. And yet they knew immediately that it probably wasn't necessary. And they had to stick to the plan. And so they did. And so I think that presumption is why you don't see stuff like that very often. And will it be attempted again? I'm sure someone will attempt it, and people have attempted this in the past, bringing choices between games. But I think it's better to just, what I like is when games read that you've played previous games in a series or from a publisher or something. I like when you turn on a game and it says like, oh, you have a save from this game. Here are 5 healing items or something. I don't need, and maybe it's what we were talking about earlier. I don't need this deep interconnectivity. And I also need creatives to own the idea of giving me a tailored story, ending it the way you want to end it, with the dialogue you want to use, with the path you think is best. Not everything has to give me player agency. That's one of the things that are special about games, but it's not all that's special about games. And so I don't want people to get lost in that. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Tim, for writing in. The Snack Swatch wrote in and said, hey guys, why do people say remakes of games can't win Game of the Year? I understand if it's something along the lines of Crash Bandicoot or Spyro, it's the same exact game, just with a prettier coat of paint. I actually disagree with you here. But with games like Dead Space and Resident Evil 4, where the core experience is at the heart, but the story and gameplay is overworked, it's an entirely new but familiar experience. What are your thoughts? Thanks for all you guys do. Well, I think Spyro and Crash Bandicoot were more impressive remakes, actually, than I thought they were going to be. They are beat for beat, but they're really well done. And like Blue Point level remake, in my opinion, just different kinds of games. But nonetheless, I'll grant you that and say that Dead Space and Resident Evil 4 are obviously going to be, well, one is and one will be a little bit different. We don't know to what extent Resident Evil 4 will be different. I don't want to know either. We'll find out. But we actually discussed on the spoiler cast, and we were all on this for Dead Space, and you guys can check that out on Patreon, that we quite enjoyed the different turns that the game took, including the inclusion of things like side quests and kind of loadless areas and not sealing things off by chapter, and the minor differences that they made. And so it's funny, Chris, because you and I think agreed, and I think you might have agreed too, Dustin, that Dead Space Remake is an absolute player in Game of the Year for me right now. I would assume the game to beat. I expect that it will be beaten. I hope that it will be beaten, but it was awesome. And so I think it should be considered for Game of the Year 100%. And it's not because they changed it up. It's not Final Fantasy VII Remake by any stretch of the imagination, which is really just a whole new game. But it's different enough and yet true enough that I think it is its own project and deserves that level of recognition, especially because it's been so long. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking about this because I was looking at movies, and I think there's many examples of remakes that got Oscar nominations. Like, that's totally normal that if you remake a movie that it's not like it's ineligible. And so
Star is Born is one of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. True Grit was one of them as well. Yeah. There's a long list of movies that are remakes that were eligible for Game of the Year. And that's one of the things too, is that, I mean, for us, our Game of the Year is just kind of like our whatever. We just do it just for fun. But I think that with anything, whether it's movies or TV or music, is that we got it. I understand it's fun, this idea of like, oh, what's going to win? But we can't give it too much credence because it really is dumb. And a lot of the ways these things are selected is also dumb. So your personal Game of the Year can be whatever you want, or your favorite creators, their Game of the Year can be whatever they want it to be. And I think that has way more value than some list of critics that are of, different levels of credibility, we'll say, when it comes to selecting what the game is. So yeah, and I think there is something to be said too about, we've had this conversation many times about the difference like between remaster and remake, and I think that there is some variability on like, well, should a remaster be your Game of the Year? In fact, I think it was a few years ago that I wanted to say my Game of the Year was that Nier Replicant remaster / remake, and I felt hesitant at the time. But looking at it now, it's like, who cares? It was released, and I played it that year. And so, yeah, that was my Game of the Year that year.
Yeah.
So
I do think that there is a differentiation between those, though. Like, I look at Shadow of the Colossus or Demon's Souls as like straight up remakes that are not classified as new games, in my opinion. Like, or it would be weird to classify those games. While I look at something like Resident Evil 2 would be a good example with with some of the changes there. Certainly Resident Evil 3 and Dead Space, where they're a little different. And like Dead Space even has New Game Plus, like a whole new ending and all these different things. So it is actually a potentially different product. And so I just think that we kind of inherently, or maybe we don't, and that will continue to be the argument, but I feel like we inherently know what the difference between those games are. Like we understand that there's a difference. And when you see something like Mega Man Battle Network Collection come out, that's its own thing. And when you see Shadow of the Colossus come out, that's its own thing. And when you see Demon Souls come out, it's its own thing, and so on and so forth. So I think it's kind of intuitive.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add, Chris?
Well, no, I would say, yeah. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you choose as game of the year, but I do think, I don't know. I guess it's more of like a question of the year. You know what I mean? Because like in 2013, or 2012, I played Shadow of the Colossus for the first time. That was the first time I played it, and I was blown away by it by then, which was like many, many, many years later.
And did you play the PS3 version?
I played the PS3 version, the one in the Ico
the collection
bundle.
Yeah.
And that was like slightly up-resed or whatever, but I remember being blown away by it, even though it was a PS2 up-res of a game. And like, you know, I could have said theoretically that was my game of the year that year, because not really much else captivated me in the same way. But, you know, there's a weird line there, because I do feel like Resident Evil 2 and Dead Space, and no doubt Resident Evil 4 and some of these other ones are so transformative. I think it's a matter of being transformative while remaining as true to the source material as possible. And it's, I think, what qualifies movie remakes as well. Like you wouldn't necessarily put like a, you know, this movie's now available in 4K as like a new movie. You know what I mean? Even though it is like technically a better watching experience and it is new things, maybe it's got some bonus features, you know, like maybe it's got like, you know, outtakes or commentary or whatever, but that's still ultimately like the same movie, as opposed to like something like, I don't know, the Thing from the 1970s, which is like a remake of like a really, really old movie. And it's still generally the same plot, but just the sheer uptick in technology and the difference in execution transform. Like most people don't even remember that original, the Thing remake from the 70s. Most people remember that as being the original. It's not. It's a remake of like a really, really old movie. But most people consider that the original because it's such an iconic piece of cinema. And there's no argument to be made that it's not, like, it's clearly superior to the original, like in every way, and it's transformative in every way. I think that's what Resident Evil 2 does. And I think that's what Dead Space does. And I think that's what Final Fantasy VII does. Not necessarily in, you know, acclaim. It's not necessarily, these games aren't necessarily way, way, way better, but like they're definitely way, way, way different experiences. And I think that's ultimately that's my personal line for qualification, is like, how transformative is this to the experience? Does it enhance it? And is it different in a meaningful way? And I would say that, you know, Blue Point Shadow of the Colossus remake is fantastic, but it's not what RE2 is to its original, you know?
Yeah.
But I think Dustin's also right in the sense that like none of this matters.
Well, totally. It's just
it's fun to talk about.
Yeah,
though.
it's interesting fodder, and yeah, again, I think it's that intuition, and we're going to need to know as more and more games are remade. Like BioShock will inevitably get a remake, and games like that, and I guess we'll see what they choose to do with them. My hope is that two things. One is that they keep the originals intact and available to people, and the second thing is that they just don't reinvent the wheel if they don't have to. When you look at a game, where I look at a game like Symphony of the Night, for instance, there is no remaking Symphony of the Night. There's nothing you could do to that game to make it better. It's perfect. And there are a lot of games like that. I think about that. I think that with all the 2D Mario games, even Super Mario All-Stars was superfluous. What we liked about it was that it was different and unique for a time when we didn't get re-releases. So I don't know. We'll see how it all shakes out. But right now, Dead Space Remake certainly is my game of the year. But it is very early. But it is awesome. If you have not played it, you definitely should. And Resident Evil 4, I'm going to be inside of you soon enough.
Ooh.
Jesus Christ. That was more grotesque than it came off more grotesque.
Here right now.
Yeah. Relax a little bit, you
know. Linka Fresh wrote in and said, "Gentlemen, how do you guys feel about playing as multiple protagonists in a single player story driven campaign? I recently played through The Last of Us Part 2 and Resident Evil 3 Remake and couldn't help but feel annoyed about it. Having to start a new character with entry level stats and weapons took a lot away from the momentum and enjoyment for me. I got over it quickly enough, but still think I prefer to not have that type of gameplay mechanic. Stay fresh, guys. Thank you." I don't think that constitutes spoilers that you play as multiple characters in those games, in my opinion. think it's
Yeah,
especially Resident Evil 3. I think it's fairly obvious, but I actually am not a huge fan of this, and I was wondering what you guys think of it. A game like The Last of Us is actually an exception to the rule. Typically, I do feel like it's unimmersive, and I know you felt about this, Chris. So I'll go to you first with God of War Ragnarok. I know that was really annoying you playing as Atreus. That's his name, right? It's been a while. It's been like 2 days, but yeah. So yeah, what do you make of this? Do you like switching characters, or do you prefer in a single player story driven campaign that you simply play as that one character?
I think it depends on the title. I think it's a risky move. It's a ballsy move for sure. Because you run the risk of, switching it up on the player in a way that the player isn't necessarily all that enveloped in. And there are games that I think it's used to great effect. I actually think the way it's used in The Last of Us 2 is pretty good. I think Resident Evil 3 is pretty good. I think Metal Gear Solid 2 is wonderful. Mm-hmm. It's my favorite. I love Metal Gear Solid 2.
It was very controversial at the time.
Yeah. And same thing with Halo 2 it was a similar situation where like that was a very controversial decision too, but I'm glad they did it because I just, it just happened to work in those situations. It really is all about execution, but those kinds of decisions will never not be controversial. Because ultimately it all hinges on whether or not each individual player connects with that new character. And that's not even necessarily 100% down to just quality of execution. That might just be personal taste. Like I personally just couldn't stand Atreus, but many people I know who were playing the game really liked it, and it's just like they're, like, hey, I like the rogue style of gameplay that let you do. And it's like, that's fair enough. Mm-hmm. I was personally sick of it because that's just kind of every single PlayStation character of major consequence as of the last several years is like basically a rogue. They're just like fast with a bow and light melee hits. It's just like I buy God of War for the satisfaction of being the brute for once, like tearing things apart and like beating shit up with my bare hands and barrowing an axe into a frost zombie or whatever. I'm not really into the whole bow thing in this context, and so I don't know. It really is all, it's mostly execution, but it is also just like a matter of personal taste. Like I did not mind it in Resident Evil 3 at all. But
Dustin, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Chris with a few other examples of sometimes it really works and other times it doesn't. This reminds me of in 2004 when Kingdom Hearts 2 came out. The beginning is very controversial in that for the first few hours of the game, you're playing as a different character. And when you're in fourth grade and you're just excited to see what's next in the story, it's very, very annoying. And this part seemingly drags on for a while. In the context now, it's actually a really interesting and cool part of the story. But then it's like, what are we doing here? Like, where isn't this supposed to be the sequel? Like, what are we doing with this other character? Yeah. I think there's ways that you can do it that are more effective than just like a hard switch during the game. Nier Automata does a good job in this with its quote unquote multiple endings, which are not really the case. It's just kind of segmenting the game in different ways and being able to replay the game as a different character and getting different perspectives. I don't know. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Or at least it may still work, but you don't want to annoy the character into thinking like, I just need to get through this part when I'm playing through this other character so I can get back to what I was doing. I think that's the key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Devil May Cry 5 was another example of it working pretty well, I thought.
Yeah.
But then there's like the one that just popped into my head as you were talking, Dustin, was Assassin's Creed 3. That was a fucking egregious one. Because you spent like 6 hours, like the first like 5 to 6 hours, or at least it felt like the first 5 or 6 hours, playing as Connor's dad, Edward or whatever. I don't know why this is so like hyper. Like I remember a lot of details about this for some reason, but yeah. And then you're introduced like midway through the game or like 5 hours into the game to Kid Connor, and you're like, well, what the fuck? And then you spend like time you play as him as a child and then like a teenager and then you're an adult and then it's like I'd rather play as this other guy now. Like you led me for 6 hours with this one guy and now you're swapping me over to this guy, and he's like, it might be interesting, but like, what the fuck?
Dude, they were selling you on the last gen version that stars that guy.
Oh, that's
Remember
right.
that?
I forgot about that. What was that called? Not Liberation. Liberation was the
Rogue?
one with the Rogue, I think it was. That's crazy. I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
Jesus.
I think that was Rogue.
Oh my Lord. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah, it's all execution, I think, and it's, you know, and even that's just like open to interpretation. Like I knew some people who didn't like it in Devil May Cry 5 with one specific character, but I loved it the entire time. So it's really just a matter of taste and execution.
Zach Helms wrote in. Oh, by the way, I saw a note here and I didn't know what it meant. I forgot to say this earlier. The Thing remake was 1982. I'm just saving you so people don't.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
I don't care. I just know people are gonna don't write in.
No, you're right. I don't know why I think of that as a 70s movie.
Zach Helms wrote in and said, "Hey, Sacred Boys, I'm tired of investing my attention for such a lengthy period of time on a game's story. Barring a few examples like my love of Halo, I almost always skip cutscenes in the games I play. It just feels like I've seen it all. And I'm here for the gameplay after all, right? Does this make me a bad gamer? I played and paid attention to the stories of all the tentpole games, but I generally have a podcast or music going, like you've mentioned in the past. Take care of family." I mean, I don't understand exclusively playing everything that isn't Halo like that. I think that you're missing out on a lot of stories. I'm not really one to judge because there are games. I did a podcast appearance recently where I was talking about, I played and beat all of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands with probably not, I have no idea what happened in that game. I listened to the cutscenes for the first 10 or 15 minutes. I thought to myself, this is obnoxious and I'm going to go along now and go on my merry way and just enjoy the gameplay. But generally speaking, I tune into the story of the games I'm playing, and I'm not always very attentive, but I'm definitely not just tuning out by rule. So I don't think you're playing games the wrong way, but this is what comes to mind for me, Chris, is why wouldn't you just play a game as a service if you don't care about the story? Some of the best games, some of the best feeling games are games as a service. You don't need to be in this space to get the gameplay itch you're looking for if you don't want the story. That's why you would be here.
Yeah, it's a little weird, especially because there's so many games that I would argue the story is like kind of the main reason why you would like. Do you skip the cutscenes in Mass Effect? You know what I mean? Like, do you skip like the dialogue? Like, I don't know. Like, it's a little bizarre to me. But I'm kind of like you, Colin, where like I'm just kind of sometimes I'll be watching a cutscene and then it'll end, and then I'll realize like I didn't absorb any of it.
Totally, yeah, that happens.
I'll be like, god damn, I'm probably gonna have to watch this again later. But it doesn't. I don't know. You can't play games the wrong way necessarily, but like I would argue that there's a lot about video games that are elevated greatly by the narratives that are in them. Like even games as a service. Like I think Destiny becomes a lot more valuable and a lot more fulfilling to play if you're actually paying attention. Like, it's really fucking cool, some of this shit. Granted, like, this is Lightfall notwithstanding with its like weird campaign or whatever, like there's still like really cool shit going on. And it enhances the game like exponentially, like to a degree that I think you're almost doing yourself a disservice if you play a game like that for the way it feels without taking that into account, because it really does enhance how the game feels, and it only serves to benefit you. Granted, you know, people only have so much bandwidth and so much time. I totally get it. Like, there's only so many things that I can really devote myself to in any given moment, and I'm definitely at my limit as far as like Destiny and like whatever individual single player game I happen to be playing around that time. I can't do much more than that. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe tune into the cutscenes every now and again. Like, don't skip as a rule, I would say. You know, if you're not feeling it, fair enough. There's definitely a game recently that I skipped through. I think it was like, oh my god, what the hell was it? Fuck, I'm drawing a blank. It was a game recently that I was playing through, and I was like skipping all the cutscenes because I just didn't. I gave the first two a try, and I was like, I'm not feeling this. I don't care, but it feels really good to play, so I'm just gonna keep going. But definitely, as a rule, to skip them is kind of weird.
That's what I did with Neon White. Was
100%, yeah.
Skipped all the cutscenes, which actually my one friend Brandon played, and he's not even into a lot of weeb stuff, but he liked the story. So maybe I skipped something that I shouldn't have. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you guys that it really would depend. I know for me with Hogwarts Legacy, some of the side stuff I really liked, and other stuff towards the end. You have to get to a certain level in order to fully beat the game. So I was just kind of grinding out. I was like, I just don't care about this. So I was skipping through some of the side story stuff.
I think that was it. Now that you said it,
Hogwarts?
It was Hogwarts. Yeah, it was Hogwarts.
Oh, okay.
Like the first couple of cutscenes, I was like, all right, I don't know. Like I just want to go around and I just want to go into the Enchanted Forest and basically murder people as a child.
Yeah, of course.
That game gets violent as hell.
Yeah,
like out of nowhere. That finishing move where you slam a guy into the ground and it makes the sound of planets exploding. Yeah. Every time you hit him into the ground, it's fucking brutal.
I like that. Yeah, there's quite a bit of just somewhat disturbing stuff when you think about it. In Harry Potter in general, actually. But does it make you a bad gamer for doing this? I wouldn't say, again, we try to stick to the mantra of play the way you want to play, but I think you are doing yourself a disservice in a lot of areas. Like, imagine, is he going to play Final Fantasy 16 and skip the cutscenes?
All 11 hours?
All 11 hours? That just sounds...
Well, this is why...
To me, it sounds heinous.
This is why I just reiterate over my original point, which I'm going to stand by, which is there are many, many, many games for you that you do not need to pay attention to the story and that there's no story there for you. And you could do whatever you want, but I'm just wondering why you're wasting money and time jumping from game to game when you're just looking for a loop. And there are so many games that can provide that free of charge better in a lot of ways than in terms of gameplay than the games you're playing. That's the only confusing part to me. It's not that you're doing it. Do whatever you want. I just think you're wasting your time and bashing your head against the wall. Skipping. I can name you fucking 10,000 games that will give you no cutscenes to skip. So go play those instead.
Yeah. Vampire Survivors is a great one.
I wonder if that's ever going to come to PlayStation.
It must. I'm sure it will.
That was a nice little pickup for Xbox. All right. Josh Harris wrote in and said, "Hey, Sacred Bimbos, Colin's chat with Ramon, my best friend, prompted some thought when he said, quote, Hades is a game that people who play games play, end quote. It had me talking with my friends. What's the most gamer-ass game? My wife said Danganronpa. She still hasn't recovered from Ultra Despair Girls. Neither have I. My pick is Persona. It's not obscenely obscure, but I'd let you know it'd let you know that someone is a gamer with a capital G. Let me know your thoughts and come to London soon. I'll buy you a pint. Thanks, Josh. We might just do that. Dustin, let's hear from you first. What game speaks to you? You're a Danganronpa and Persona fan, so I'm wondering if either of these choices speak to you as kind of being the gamer-ass game, the capital G, you're a gamer game. I don't know what mine is because a few of them come to mind, but I'm not even sure if they're truly sufficient. Like the first thing that came to mind to me is Dragon Quest. That's a game that both sells appreciably, but not that well, and is so old school and hardcore that if you like Dragon Quest, you must like a lot of the same games I like, and that's very noticeable to me. But I don't even think that that's a really sufficient choice because, I don't know. I don't know that reads nerdy enough even. What do you think?
Yeah, I have a skewed perspective on this because I didn't think that my wife Holly was a hardcore gamer, but she's played all of Dragon Quest and she's played stuff like Earthbound, but she'll just like drop games for a few months at a time and then come back and play some like crazy hardcore JRPG. That's like, well, I didn't expect you would play something like that. But I mean, what's the most gamer ass capital G? I feel like it's gotta be EVE Online. Like that is the most hardcore.
I was thinking that too. Yeah.
Or even like some like MMOs in general, which is weird because they do have some kind of broad appeal. But I think about how people like run raids and stuff like that, or playing out like the auction house and these games that have these like many, many layers of mechanics. It's weird because they, like I said, they seem like they would only appeal to the most hardcore, but some of those games do appeal to people that's kind of their game. They might not play a bunch, but they just play those. So I don't know. It's getting harder to tell just because gaming is so popular now that it's not just something that certain people, that capital G gamers play, that you can be more, lightly into games and maybe be intrigued by some of these more hardcore games. Danganronpa is probably a good answer, but both of these games are very popular. For me, it has to be something that's a little more niche when it comes to it being
You
something
want to
like
see them
this.
playing Fairy Fencer F or some shit like that, some like NIS
Right.
game.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got you. Sword art. Yeah, some
man.
shit like that. Chris, you want to sound off on this before we move on?
Yeah, I don't know. The first thing I thought of was World of Warcraft, because that's like just such a that like when I for a long time when I thought of gamer, that's what I thought of, like and that is like kind of the general vibe of that game. I remember feeling like that game was like impossible to get into when I was like a kid. I was like, I just don't under fucking stand what I'm saying. But as far as like, I don't know, man, I think Dustin's right. It's really difficult to kind of pin one down because now it's just so. I think like maybe Earthbound is one of those. Like maybe if you've played Earthbound, that's probably a pretty good indication that you like a random person, or like Divinity Original Sin 2 or something. Like something like that, where it's like very specific. You're not going to see like an ad for it on like football or anything like that. But like if you've even heard of that or know about it, chances are you are in tune to information that your casual passerby is not really all that privy to. It's not Pokemon or something, but yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one. Those are the two that come to mind, though.
Christopher Alvarez has our final write-in and says, "Hey guys, when it comes to PlayStation controller inputs in Japan, circle is X, and in America, X is circle. What do you think about that? Putting muscle memory aside, of course, which one truly makes more sense to you?" This is true. This used to be built into the consoles and the handhelds themselves, but is no longer the case. And I actually think that they're taking on a more American standard, which I think was a problem in Japan, or a more Western standard, I should say. But the Japanese standard is what makes sense from an objective point of view, because you are circling your selections that you want and you are putting an X over the selections you do not want. That is the entire intention of the circle and the X and selecting things. That's why it is like that in Japanese. And we adopted, I think, a different way of doing it based on the more standard setups that we were used to on the consoles at the time that were more engineered towards that. And I think that's basically all there is to it.
Yeah.
So that I don't know if you guys have any opinion on that, but to me, that's I think it makes much more sense in Japan.
I think the iconography in Japan makes more sense, but I think the layout in America makes more sense. Like, it makes sense to me that the bottom face button would be the select button, or the thing you use to pick something.
Yeah.
It's weird though. It's weird though that it's X and not circle. I almost feel like they should be just switched iconography wise. But like the layout, to me, like selecting, like using the furthest right button on the faceplate to make a selection is fucking weird. Like it makes no sense ergonomically to me. Like it's just dumb. But I think, yeah, I don't know. The icons are weird. They're always kind of confusing to me, especially going from like PSP to like PS3, and then so there were certain Japanese games that would like kind of like flip it on you, and you'd be like, oh fuck, what's going on?
I think Metal Gear, right?
Metal Gear is
used circle as it's confirmed in the menus.
Yeah, I think that was tricky to get over. Like it took me a good like 3 hours when I was playing Metal Gear Solid 2 again on Vita. Or at least from my memory of it, to really get through that and kind of get over that mental hurdle. But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird. It's weird how that makes sense to Japan though. Like I don't know why the furthest right button on the faceplate makes sense. Like that feels so weird to me.
Just because I think it's a very literal interpretation of what it's saying. Yeah.
You know why circle is confirmed? Because Nintendo, the A button is in the spot of the circle button. So they kind of set the rules, and then the US changed it. You know, like thinking about,
yeah, but
I don't know why they did that, but Xbox also changed it. But Nintendo, they set the standard with the Super Nintendo that was the button.
Yeah, you are right. But at least when Xbox changed it, they switched the iconography as well. Like A was at the bottom now. You know what I mean? So like they were like, okay, this ergonomically makes sense, and iconography it makes sense. Because A would be the one that you would choose things with.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know.
All right. Well, thanks for writing in. Appreciate you. Who was this? Oh, Christopher Alvarez. Appreciate you writing in. Thank you. And thank you for all that wrote in on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. That's it for this episode of Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. It's time to go. Chris, do you have any closing comments?
No, I was just closing my tabs, and I forgot that this turtle was here still. But no, I'm probably gonna make some food. I don't know. I'm not even really hungry, but I feel like I should eat. Because I didn't have breakfast this morning. I rolled out of bed on camera. I feel like it's about that time. You know what? I haven't had cereal in ages. I think I might just have cereal today for breakfast. Why not?
All right. Enjoy. Right. Jerry Seinfeld. All right.
Yeah, cereal.
And Dustin, cereal. Any closing comments?
Cereal is good. I was actually just telling Holly I'm in the mood for a box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, which is just, when you think about it, a horrendous thing to eat in the morning, especially for a child. But I had that shit all the time. I moved away from it, but I was just thinking about it. I'm like, damn, I could go for some Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So maybe I'll have to do that soon.
That shit is
clearly,
still
I
delicious.
had nothing interesting left to say. So
yeah.
Thank you for listening. Have a good one.
Yeah, get the hell out of here, all of you.
Yeah, thank you all out there before you go for listening to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. We appreciate you. Patreon.com/laststandmedia, laststandmedia.store. Leave us nice reviews on iTunes and other places if you can. Follow us on YouTube if you'd like. And thank you again. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.